Welcome back to part 7 of What If Naruto Was Told About the Secret Behind the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Please remember to like and subscribe as it motivates me to upload more videos in the future, and as always, link to the fanfiction is in the description. Chapter 19, Prelims, A Time for Battle. Uchiha Sasuke vs. Akado Yoroi. Well looks like they decided to start you right off the bat, Naruto grinned at his foul-haired teammate. Sasuke grunted as Naruto and the other genin walked up the stairs, leaving him with his opponent. He watched his opponent move towards the other end of the arena with his hands in his pocket and typical, cool as a cucumber Uchiha, expression on his face. I hope you're ready, Uchiha, Yoroi stated as he got into a fighting stance. Powerful clan or not, you're going to lose here. Sasuke would have rolled his eyes at the other genin, were it not uncool for him to do so. You keep telling yourself that. Are both fighters ready? Hayate asked as he received a nod from Akado and a grunt from Sasuke, Hajime. As soon as the fight started, Yoroi went through several hand seals as he came at Sasuke. His hands began to glow a light blue. Sasuke flared his Sharingan as he took his stance. He could see something odd about the glowing hand but was not sure what it did, so decided to avoid it for the most part. When Yoroi got to Sasuke, he reared his glowing fist back and attempted to strike at the raven-haired Uchiha. However, Sasuke managed to dodge the attack with relative ease, using the time dilation and predicting abilities of his Sharingan to great effect. He pushed his way into his opponent's guard and landed several hits on the man's torso. Yoroi staggered back from the hits. They stung, but were not devastating. He looked up just in time to receive a fairly powerful kick to the face that sent him tumbling to the ground. Yoroi got up and wiped the blood that had come from his now split lip, glaring at the Uchiha survivor. His hand began to glow again and he attempted to strike out at Sasuke. However, the raven-haired genin had the Sharingan available for use thanks to Naruto and thus, was able to evade every single attempt Yoroi made. It was made easier because Kakashi was faster than Yoroi when they sparred, so this man was pretty much going at a snail's pace. Sasuke blocked the left fist coming at him, and then ducked under the glowing hand. When the hand passed over him, Sasuke felt a slight drain on his chakra reserves. I see, so that's why he's been so adamant about getting me with that hand. Sasuke thought as he swept Yoroi's legs out from under him and then lashed out with a kick that connected to the other ninja's jaw on his way down. You know, if you want to actually hit me, you're going to need to be a lot faster than that, Sasuke stated as Yoroi got back up with a glare. Also, that little chakra-draining jutsu of yours isn't going to work on me. Yoroi glowered at Sasuke and came at him with his glowing hand again. Sasuke got this in the bag, Naruto stated as he watched the battle. That other guy's like a one-trick pony, he can't seem to do much more than that glowing hand of his. It does look like Sasuke-kun's winning rather easily, Sakura stated in agreement, making Naruto raise an eyebrow at her as he wondered why she was not screaming at him for calling her crushed Tem. Though she has been a little nicer since I woke up with my battle from the pedo Tem, Naruto thought to himself before shrugging and turning back towards the battle. As soon as Yoroi got right up to Sasuke, said genin disappeared. The next thing Yoroi knew was getting a hard kick under the chin and getting sent flying into the air. Sasuke appeared under him using the Konoha Kage Buyu leaf. Shadow danced to get under him. That's my. Lee stuttered, recognizing the attack that he often used and the one Sasuke had seen only once. Guy remained silent, though he was not pleased by Sasuke blatantly stealing someone else's move without asking or bothering to really master it. I'll admit that move was taken from someone else, Sasuke stated as he hovered behind Yoroi. But from here on out it's all original, Shishi Rendant Lion's Barrage. He called out the name of his attack and used a heel drop into Yoroi's stomach. Said genin was sent sailing into the ground, smashing into it and coughing up blood before passing out. Shusa Uchiha Sasuke, Hayate announced. Sasuke stuck his hands back into his pocket and walked back up the stairs where his teammates were. You stole that move from Lee, Naruto accused. I did what I had to. That move was useful, so I figured I could learn it, Sasuke said, feeling the need to defend himself against Naruto's accusing eyes. Naruto glared at Sasuke. You took it without his permission and used it in a move of your own. That's a blatant sign that you don't respect others for their hard work. Lee put a lot of effort into learning those moves, and for you to just copy them shows you don't appreciate just how powerful they are. For some reason when Naruto said that Sasuke winced. He would not admit it, but that kind of accusation actually stung. Whatever, he tried to play it off. Naruto scowled a bit but decided not to comment on it further as two more names appeared on the board. Yamanaka Ino vs. Higurashi Tenten. Good luck Ten-chan. Naruto called out as Tenten walked down the stairs. Tenten was glad that she was not facing Naruto or he would have seen the blush on her face. Several of the girls did notice however and scowled. Yosh. Tenten, show them your flames of youth. Guy cried out. Let your youth burn brightly. Lee shouted in enthusiasm. Tenten blushed even deeper, not sure what was worse, having Naruto cheer for her or having her green spandex-clad teammate and sensei cheer her on. Well, I suppose Naruto-kun's cheering is not so bad. But do Lee and Guy sensei really have to be so loud? Are both fighters ready? Asked Hayate as soon as the two got onto the stadium floor. When they both signaled readiness, Hayate nodded. Hajime. Ino threw some shuriken as soon as the battle started before running at Tenten. Said weapons expert sighed as the weapons came out her. She began to dodge the weapons with ease and to the shock of Ino, grabbed onto several of the shuriken before tossing them back. Ino's eyes widened as two shuriken managed to graze her arms, and bit back a yelp of pain. If you're going to use such a basic tactic against me then you might as well quit, Tenten stated in a bored tone. It's obvious from the lack of muscles on your body and the fact that you look like a twig that would snap if a breeze hit it, that you were nothing more than a fangirl at the academy. Ino scowled. Shut up. I'll show you. She ran at Tenten who merely sighed in disappointment. The moment Ino got within 2 feet of Tenten, said girl leapt into the air and spun around. Konoha Senpuu. Tenten smashed a kick right in Ino's face, sending the girl flying back several feet where she landed on her back and gasped as the air was knocked out of her. With such weak skills you should just give up now. I'm not done yet. Ino said as she struggled to get up. You know your teammate is gonna get her ass kicked right? Naruto said as he made his way over to Team 10. Badly, I might add. Ten-chan utterly despises fangirls like her. Now I think that's being a little unfair, Misumi said as he took a drag of his cigarette. Ino has a few tricks up her sleeve. You mean the Shintention no Jutsu? Asked Naruto before shaking his head. That jutsu requires the person she is aiming for to stand still, and if it doesn't hit her soul will be stuck outside of her body until it hits something and bounces back. Besides, Ten-chan could have ended this a long time ago if she had used her weapons since that's what she specializes in. Also, you're forgetting that she was trained by Guy Sensei. Asuma shivered a bit. You do make a valid point there. How do you know so much about that girl? Asked Shikamaru. He actually agreed with Naruto. There was no way Ino would win this, and for all the reasons the blonde gave. Naruto grinned. I've been training with Ten-chan and her team since I became a genin. Every other day after missions and team training with my own, I go over to Training Ground 9 and train with her and Lee. Shikamaru nodded and a part of him wondered if this was why the whiskered bond seemed so much better than he had been in the academy, though he was positive there was more to this than just that. Shintention number Jutsu. The pair snapped their attention back to the battle as Ino called out the one clan jutsu she knew. However, it didn't matter since Tenten had already moved from the spot Ino had been aiming for. When the girl slumped down, Tenten merely placed a kunai at her neck and waited for the blonde girl to come to. When she did, it was to see the bun-haired girl in position to slit her throat. Yield, Tenten ordered. Fine, Ino huffed in disappointment. Hayate coughed as the match ended. Shusa Higurashi Tenten. Tenten grinned as she made her way back up the stairs. She was stopped as Naruto stepped in front of her and gave her a grin. Nice job, you really kicked her ass. Tenten blushed a bit but smiled back. Thanks Naruto-kun. Yosh. Tenten, that was a most youthful match. Guy said, giving the bun-haired girl the nice guy pose. You truly showed your flames of youth, Tenten. Lee matched his mentor's pose. Thanks you too. Tenten's sweat dropped as she decided to keep Naruto between herself and her team. Sabaku no Kankuro vs. Tsurugi Misumi. Oh look, it's Make-up Boy coming up to fight, Naruto said, loudly. Kankuro stopped and glared at him. Damn it, I told you it's war paint. Naruto snickered. Yeah, war paint that you probably stole from your sister's makeup drawer. Kankuro saw red. You stupid little brat. When I get done here I'm coming after you. Hayate coughed to get the attention of everyone so they could start the fight. Naruto settled down, snickering occasionally as the fight started. Eventually he really started to watch the match. Unfortunately this one went by fairly quickly, about 2 or 3 minutes all told. It seemed that Misumi guy was able to stretch his limbs to incredible length. He had managed to wrap his body around Kankuro and threatened to crush him if he did not yield. Of course Kankuro just laughed at him and Misumi crushed his neck. Only to find out that Kankuro was in fact a puppet, surprising Naruto and others who had not known what the large mummified object on his back was. After that Kankuro had come out of the bandages, showing that he had hidden himself inside of them and had been using chakra strings to control Karasu's movement. After that several spikes had stuck out of Karasu's body and impaled Misumi who was dead before he even hit the ground. Inuzuka Kiba vs. Ni Yugito. Alright Akamaru, it looks like we're up. Kiba shouted as he forewent the stairs and just jumped off the railing. Yugito merely walked at a more sedate pace, not really bothering to hurry things up. When she got down she saw Kiba leering at her and resisted the urge to hiss. Wow, check this out Akamaru, we're facing a babe. Kiba grinned lecherously. Hey baby, how about after this you and I go out somewhere? Yugito grit her teeth, the only sign she was pissed by what the dog using genin said as she replied in a cool tone, no thanks, I don't date men who have a habit of not bathing. What was that? Kiba growled, listen here you bitch, you should be glad someone like me asked you out. I doubt anyone would be pleased to have such a lecherous pig who smells like wet dog ask them out, Yugito said in disdain. Wow Kurenai-san, I thought you would have beaten the pervert out of Kiba by now, Naruto said with a chuckle. Kurenai scowled as she listened to her genin speak, I have tried, but it's more difficult than it looks. Well, can't be helped I suppose, Naruto shrugged. Kiba had always been something of a lecher, hitting on nearly every girl in class, much to their displeasure, it's just who he is I guess. Naruto turned his attention back to the battle when he felt a massive killing intent being released from the blonde woman. Naruto chuckled a bit, oh she's pissed. Kiba never seems to learn, even I understand to never do that to a woman. Are you sure about that? You could have fooled me when we met, Kyuubi's melodic voice entered his mind. Naruto frowned for a moment as he heard Kyuubi's voice and the teasing tone in it. He was not really sure what to make of her yet, but he also knew they were pretty much stuck together and that he should at least try to be cordial even if he was not yet sure they could be friends. With that thought in mind he decided to play along, now that's not fair Q-chan. I was so surprised to find out that the demon who was sealed inside of me was a woman, a hot woman I might add, that I forgot my manners. I learned all about speaking to women from Anko. Kyuubi was thankful that Naruto could not see her otherwise he would have actually seen a rather prominent blush stain her cheeks. The only time she had ever received compliments from anyone were the men who had been enthralled by her beauty, and they were not much more than mindless slaves. However, being a several millennia old Biju she was able to recover admirably. Anko is hardly the appropriate person to learn how to treat a woman. She's almost like female version of you. Naruto had to resist the urge to face fault. What? That's not true. Is it? Kyuubi smirked as she chalked up a point for her. Don't feel bad Naruto-kun. It's nothing serious, you just lack tact. But don't worry, I'll teach you all about how to treat a female after the second stage. Great, Naruto sighed, just what I need, etiquette lessons from someone who's known for destroying things with a single swipe of her tail. I heard that. So? Naruto asked, it's not like you can do anything about it. Oh now that is where you're wrong, Kyuubi said, and Naruto suddenly got an ominous feeling. I may not be capable of controlling your actions, however I am more than capable of using my Yuki to make you very uncomfortable. For instance say, cut off the anatomy that makes you a male. Naruto paled, Gah. I'm sorry, please don't be angry with me. Kyuubi gave a dramatic sigh but was secretly chalking up another point to her, seriously, what am I going to do with you? Help me with my etiquette? Asked Naruto in a sheepish voice. Naruto could picture the smirk on the vixen's face, HMPH, you'll be getting that anyways. No I was thinking of punishment. Perhaps I really will cut off the circulation to certain parts of your anatomy. Everyone that was standing near Naruto wondered why he had suddenly turned white as a sheet, ah. Come on Kyuubi, that's not fair. Whoever said I play fair? Naruto almost felt like crying, but if Kyuubi really could do what she suggested, then it would behoove him to not do anything to actually anger her right now. Fine. Anyways, Naruto, take a look at that girl, can you feel it? Naruto looked over at the girl who was releasing enough killing intent that Kiba had soiled himself. Feel what? Her killing intent. It is pretty intense, not as much as Zabuza's, but no, not that. She's using yokai in her attacks, well, a little bit. That girl is a Jinchuriki. Really? Naruto asked in shock. There's another Jinchuriki here. Which one does she hold? It's hard to tell for sure, but I think she holds the Nibi. The two-tailed hellcat. Kyuubi paused for a moment. Yeah, I'm sure that's the one she holds, and I've only ever seen that one once. It tried to attack me several hundred years ago and I was actually forced to turn it into ash with an Amari menacing ball because it was so damned persistent. It must have gotten caught some time after it reformed and then sealed. Naruto gave the equivalent of a mental nod. No wonder she felt so familiar. I never expected to meet someone like me here, Naruto frowned. That's probably why she kept staring at me. The match was over almost before it started. As soon as Hayate gave the signal to begin, Yugito rushed Kiba faster than he could follow, and had already finished a set of hand seals. The 5 fingers on her left hand were crackling with electricity. Ichi. She hit Kiba on the left shoulder and the spark on her index finger disappeared. Ni. Kiba received another hit, this time on the left leg. San. He received a hit on his right arm. Yan. Then a hit on his right leg. Go. And finally a hit on his solar plexus. Raiden. Reibikufu, lightning blast. Kiba didn't even get the chance to scream in pain as his left shoulder exploded in a shower of electricity, launching him to the right. Then his left leg exploded, sending his body spinning through the air in a corkscrew. After that his right shoulder exploded, sending him sailing backwards and to the right. His right leg went after that, blasting him away again. And finally, his chest exploded, sending him crashing into the statue, creating a large crater. The spectators all watched in shock and the men in a bit of fear as Kiba fell onto the floor, bleeding profusely, already unconscious. Consider yourself lucky I didn't kill you for being such a pervert. Yugito hissed, even though Kiba was too out of it to even be aware of his surroundings, much less hear the blonde woman speak. The Kumo Kunoichi did not wait for Hayate to announce the winner as she strolled up to her teammates. That was pretty harsh, Yugito-san, the dark-skinned female of their team said. Yugito shrugged, you know how I feel about perverts, Ayako. Don't tell me you wouldn't do the same. Ayako shrugged, I guess I would, at least since it was that dog-using kid. She glanced over at the blonde-haired boy who she had barely managed to recognize as the obnoxious blonde from the first exam, though I might not if it was him. Yugito looked over to her fellow blonde to see him talking with that bun-haired girl. You know she's right, he is quite the catch. I so don't need your perverted comments right now, Nibi, Yugito said, with a frown and small blush. She really wasn't sure why Nibi would make comments on men. The giant cat had no gender and did not seem interested in humans, yet for some reason it loved to tease her whenever an attractive male was around. Though she assumed it was some form of revenge for being sealed inside of her. The two-tailed cat snickered, so you say, but we both know what you think. Besides, he's a lot like you. Yugito frowned at that, what do you mean he's a Jinchuriki? Her eyes widened a bit as she looked back over to the blonde. As if sensing her eyes on him, Naruto turned his head to see her staring at him. The two eyed each other for a moment before he gave her a grin and waved. Yugito blushed a bit and looked away, causing Naruto to chuckle and get back to his conversation. Of course, though I sense something odd about his chakra, it's different. What do you mean different? That's just what I mean, it feels different than human chakra. To be honest, it almost feels like a demon's yokai, only it's not as potent. Yugito took a small glance over at the blonde again, wondering what was so different about the blonde Konoha genin. Nara Shikamaru vs. Tsuchi Kin. Man, how troublesome, why do I have to fight a woman? Shikamaru groaned. Several tick marks appeared on Ino's head. What was that, Shikamaru? Do you have a problem with women? Shut up, troublesome blonde. Shikamaru walked down the stairs, ignoring Ino's threats to castrate him for his sexist comments. He reached the bottom of the stairs and made his way over to the arena. Hey ref, do you think I could just forfeit? This fight's too troublesome. Plus I really don't want to be fighting a girl. Hayate's sweat dropped at the lazy Nara boy's attitude. Kin got a tick mark on her head, so you got a problem with fighting girls huh? Then I suppose I'll just have to beat you quickly. Whatever. I saw the other two sound ninjas' abilities. Shikamaru frowned as he looked at the black-haired kunoichi. However, I don't know anything about hers. On top of that she's already seen my jutsu. Hajime. Shikamaru went into several hand seals for the only jutsu he knew. Kage main no jutsu. His shadow began to elongate and stretch as it made its way towards Kin. That jutsu again, Kin snorted. You're nothing but a one-trick pony. She began moving, dodging the shadow as she threw several senbon with bells attached to them. Shikamaru ducked, dodging the senbon. He turned his head when he heard a chime and saw the bells attached to the senbon. Bells. Shikamaru smirked, that's an old trick. Next you'll throw one needle with a bell and one without it right. Then when I react to the sound of the bell and dodge the first one, the second one will get me right. You sure like to run off your mouth. Kin said as she threw several senbon needles. If you think I run off my mouth then you should be glad you're not facing Naruto, Shikamaru said. I heard that you lazy bastard. Naruto shouted. Troublesome blonde, Shikamaru said and he was about to dodge when he heard a bell ring, only to realize at the last second that she was using the string to ring the bells behind her. Now I've got you, Kin shouted as she threw her senbon at Shikamaru. Unable to dodge the attack the lazy Nara genius raised his arms to block it, getting several senbon stuck in his arms. Shikamaru was about to make his move after that, when he found himself losing balance. What the? He looked over at Kin and saw that there were now 3 of her. You like? Kin asked with a smirk, this is my genjutsu. I utilize sound waves and direct them inside your body to knock your equilibrium off, you're likely seeing several of me by now. Damn it, Shikamaru muttered as he watched the 3 Kins walk closer to his position, each one taking out several senbon. Ha, not so tough now or yo, she stopped when she felt herself freeze, my body. Hey, Kage main no jutsu success, Shikamaru smirked as he shook of the effects of her sound-based genjutsu. Interesting. So that's how he did it. Naruto said as he spotted what really happened. What do you mean Naruto? Asked Sakura, looking up from the battle towards her blonde teammate, how did he do what? How he caught her, Naruto said as he gestured over to the battle. I almost didn't see it, in fact if my eyesight wasn't as good as it was I doubt I would have seen it. So how did he get her? Asked Tenten as she leaned over the railing. I guess you two haven't noticed yet, but the shadows for the strings attached to that chick's senbon are far thicker than they should be. Naruto grinned as he watched Shikamaru take out a shuriken and launch it at the girl, who had been forced to do the same thing. At last the minute Shikamaru dodged the attack by bending backwards and forming a bridge. Kin had no such luck. Shikamaru had maneuvered her so that when she bent over she ended up smacking the back of her head on the wall, knocking her unconscious. Yeah, go Shikamaru. Ino cheered, pleased to see one of her teammates had made it. TCH, this is so troublesome, Shikamaru muttered as Hayate announced him as the winner. Aburame Shino vs. Abum Zaku. This sucks, I wanted to get some payback on that Uchiha for what he did to my arms, Zaku said, getting a snort from the raven-haired genin who decided the fight was not even worth watching. When the battle started Shino decided to speak, shocking those who had thought him mute. You do not have use of your arms, I would suggest you forfeit. HMPH, forfeit this. Zaku took out his left arm from its sling and thrust it towards Shino, Zenkuaha. A blast of air shot towards Shino who did nothing to dodge. As soon as it did Shino was sliced through before he dissolved into bugs, what? Shino appeared right next to Zaku and punched him in the face. The Oto genin stumbled back a bit before righting himself and growling, Zenkuaha. He sent another sonic airwave at Shino but the Konoha genin dissolved into bugs again. Damn it. Quit hiding behind your insects. I am not hiding behind anything. Zaku turned to see Shino standing behind him, ha. I got you now. I do not think so, Shino said as he pointed behind Zaku. Said genin turned around to see a swarm of bugs behind him. You see, while you were so focused on me and my Kikai Bunshin bug clones, I had been letting my bugs amass themselves. And since you have only one arm to fight with, you can only hit one us. It is always good to have an ace in the hole. Rather than forfeit. Zaku looked smug, an ace in the hole huh? Then how about this? Zaku brought his other cast out of its sling and aimed it at the bugs, while the other went to Shino. Zenkuaha. Everyone had expected that to be the end for Shino. However, they became surprised when rather than shoot out those powerful airwaves, Zaku's arms expanded as if something was stuck inside of them. Zaku watched in horror as his arms began to get larger and larger. A scream tore through his throat as the pressure on his arms became so great that they were both ripped off at the elbow. It wasn't long before Zaku passed out from the pain of losing his arms, making Shino the winner. An ace in the hole is all well and good, but 2 aces are better, Shino said and walked back up the stairs as Hayate announced him the winner. Sakura shuddered at the gruesome sight of seeing someone's arms getting ripped clean off. I don't understand, how did Shino do that? He hid his bugs inside of that Zaku guy's air plugs, Naruto answered as he reviewed the fight in his mind. While Zaku was looking between Shino and the army of bugs, he had more bugs slip inside of those windpipes on his hand to seal them up. The pressure from the air that was inside of his arms became so great that they were simply ripped off from the force. You are correct Uzumaki-san, Shino said as he came up the stairs. Naruto grinned, good match Shino. Shino nodded and walked back to his team. Man, those bugs were just creepy. Ayako said with a shiver, I wonder where he got them. Yugito frowned as she answered, he's a member of the Aburame clan. They apparently allow those insects they use to live inside them and feast on their chakra. In return they are granted the ability to use them to communicate and fight for them. Akeo gagged, so they're like parasites. Gross. Seems Konoha's filled with a bunch of freaks, Daisuke grunted. Yugito just shook her head at the bratty Genin's stupidity. Ukizo Daisuke vs. Rock Lee. Yes. I finally get my turn. Lee shouted as he began to jump up and down. I used reverse psychology by thinking that I didn't want to go and now it's my turn. Yes. Woohoo. Lee. Guy said, trying to get the Genin's attention as he began to dance. Lee. He shouted only for it to have no effect. Listen to me Lee. Guy punched Lee in the face, sending him into a wall. Less than a second later Lee got up and saluted, yes Guy-sensei. I'm sorry I had to do that Lee. Guy said as tears formed in his eyes, you're just young and burning in the fires of your youth. Guy-sensei. Lee shouted with a waterfall of tears streaming down his eyes. Lee. Guy-sensei. Lee. Guy-sensei. As Guy and his mini-me began hugging a powerful genjutsu, complete with a sunset and crashing waves appeared. Everyone in the room started screaming as they tried to claw their eyes out. Many of the foreigners were especially disturbed by what was happening. Kurenai tired dispelling the creepy sunset genjutsu, only to be shocked when she found out it didn't work. Kai, why won't it work? The only people who did not seem to be affected by the extremely disturbing scene were the Sandame, who had unfortunately seen it and even more disturbing things in his lifetime, Tenten and Neji who had seen it nearly every day since they were put on this team, Kakashi, who was too busy reading his book to be bothered with it, and Naruto, who had seen it enough times that it no longer bothered him. Thankfully for everyone's sanity the pair eventually stopped, though at least half of the people in the room were now blind as well as mentally and emotionally scarred. Guy gave Lee his nice guy pose, now Lee. Go fight. Let your flames of youth explode. Explode. Lee shouted as he jumped off the railing where Daisuke was already waiting for him. About damn time you freak. Daisuke sneered, just for making me wait and that disgusting genjutsu you made, I'm gonna beat you into the ground. Lee frowned as he slid into his stance, that is a most unyouthful thing to say. Hajime. The moment the fight started Lee shot off like a rocket speeding towards Daisuke who was forced to abandon his hand seals and roll out of the way of Lee's attack. Getting back to his feet Daisuke was just in time to duck a kick from Lee, jumping back he threw several shuriken at the Bowcut Genin. Lee however dodged them with ease as he closed the distance. Jumping into the air Lee spun around and managed to land a kick on Daisuke's head. Konoha Senpuu, he called as he landed back on the ground, while Daisuke went flying into the wall. Daisuke grunted as cracks spread out from the center of impact. Falling to ground the Kumo Genin struggled to get on his feet, you little shit. I'm gonna kill you now. He growled at Lee as he went through several hand seals. That's it. Take this. Raiden. Giant lightning release, false darkness. A large lightning bolt shot out of Daisuke's mouth, blasting its way towards Lee. Or at least, where Lee had been. The lightning struck the ground and caused sparks and dirt to fly everywhere. Daisuke began looking around for Lee, only to be caught off guard when said genin appeared right in front of him. Daisuke tried to attack but received several blows to the torso for his troubles. He staggered back, holding his now cracked ribs as Lee disappeared again. Daisuke received a kick to the back of his head, sending him tumbling down. He managed to turn his tumble into a roll and landed back on his feet. However, Lee was already there, launching a kick into the Kumo genin's gut. Daisuke stumbled back and looked up. Once again Lee was not there and he received a kick to his head to the left side of his head for his troubles. Watching the Kumo genin wobble a bit, Lee felt that he needed only one more hit to win this. However, as he came in, Daisuke had finished a set of one-handed seals he had learned and placed his hand on the ground. Raiden. Tenrai Dageki, Celestial Shock. Electricity burst along the ground and Lee was moving towards it too fast to stop and dodge. The electricity hit Lee, making him cry out in pain as he dropped to his knees. "Huh? How do you like that?" Daisuke asked, his breathing heavy as blood poured down his face from the bust nose and lip. "It is most impressive," Lee said as he stood up, smoke pouring from him as he shook the attack off. "A most youthful technique, however, I am not without some techniques of my own." He looked up at his sensei who gave him a thumbs up. Smiling, Lee unwound the bandages on his arms. "What the hell are you doing?" asked Daisuke, allowing Lee to do this so he could regain his energy. "You will see," Lee replied as he finished unwrapping his bandages. The moment he did, he disappeared, and Daisuke felt a foot smash under his chin and launch him into the air. Using the Konoha Cage Buyu, Lee appeared behind the genin and wrapped his bandages around Daisuke. The pair then began to spin as they descended and Daisuke ended up crashing headfirst into the arena floor. Lee panted a bit as everyone looked down into the crater to see Daisuke with his eyes rolled up into the back of his head. The only way people could even tell that he was alive were the twitches and spasms his body seemed to go through periodically. While the medics carried Daisuke out, Hayate announced the winner, Shusa Rock Lee. "Yes, I did it, Guy-sensei. I won," Lee shouted as he fell on his butt, no longer able to move due to the jutsu he used. Naruto and Tenten went down and helped Lee back up the stairs where Guy was grinning broadly. "Way to go, Lee. That's the way to show your flames of youth." "Thank you, Guy-sensei," Lee said with tears in his eyes. Naruto noticed the looks the two were giving and decided to stop them before this resulted in a hug fest with him and Tenten caught in it. "If you two start hugging, I swear to Kami I'm going to throw you over the railing, Lee." Tenten giggled a bit while Lee looked embarrassed. "I apologize, Naruto-san, I will try to keep my youthful flames down." Naruto rolled his eyes before grinning at Tenten, who smiled back. Ayako vs. Hyuga Neji. Neji smirked as he saw who his opponent was. It must be fate. "Oh no, this could be a problem," Tenten muttered as Neji walked down to the arena floor. Naruto blinked as he looked at Tenten, then to her sensei who had a rare serious expression on his face. He was not sure what was going on, but Naruto had the feeling something bad was going to happen. Neji seems pleased with something, but Tenten and Guy seemed worried. The whiskered blonde looked at the two before turning his attention back to Neji. "Maybe I should be prepared to intervene since I get the odd feeling things will get very out of hand soon." Neji had to fight to maintain his Hyuga composure, and not grin as he stared at his opponent. "Normally I would give you a chance to forfeit, however it seems fate has given me a chance to seek retribution for your village's crimes. I would be a fool to pass this up." Ayako frowned as her crimson eyes stared at him in thought. "I have no clue what you're talking about, but I'm not going to back down." "That's good, I don't want you to." Neji got into his Juken stance. Seeing as both fighters seemed ready, Hayate began the match, Hajime. As Neji rushed forward, intent on making the Kumo Kunoichi suffer, Ayako went through several hand seals. Raiden. Kusari no Raiko, Chains of Lightning. Ayako smashed her hands into the ground and lightning that took the shape of a chain shot out of the ground. Neji was forced to jump left and backpedal as the chain began to follow him, stopping after several seconds. Ayako began more hand seals, hoping to not give Neji the chance to close the distance between them. "If he gets in close I'm done for." Raiden. Rayari, lightning release, lightning spear. Ayako held out her hand and a spear of lightning formed in it, which she then proceeded to toss at Neji. Neji growled as he realized his concentration had slipped enough that there was no time to dodge. Kaden, rotation, he called out as he spun around and created a blue dome around himself. The lightning spear crashed into the dome and dissipated against the chakra shield. Standing next to her sensei, Hinata gasped, he knows the Kaden. But that's main house Te technique. Kurenai looked over at her student in worry to see the girl looking shaken. Ayako gasped as she saw her lightning attack dissipate against the shield. What the hell? How could he block that? Neji smirked as he looked at Ayako and noticed the fear she had. That is called the Kaden. By expelling chakra throughout all might tenketsu points and spinning rapidly, it forms an impenetrable shield that no jutsu can get through. Ayako grit her teeth as she launched several shuriken and went through more hand signs. Raiden. Hinoko, sparks. Thrusting out her hands, several sparks shot out and connected with the shuriken, making them crackling with lightning. Neji merely scoffed as he channeled chakra into his hands and began swatting the shuriken away like they were nothing, though a few people could see he was just making a show of not being hurt as several burn marks appeared on his hands. Ayako barely even had time to gasp before Neji was upon her. What happened next was not a battle but a beating. In his rage and desire for vengeance, Neji began lashing out at Ayako, striking extremely painful points in her body with his Juken strikes. Everyone winced as Ayako began to scream in pain. Blood began pouring from her mouth and she felt as if someone had taken her chakra coils and burnt them with a Kaden jutsu. She did not even have the chance to fall down as Neji continued striking her so fast that it looked too many as if her body was just jerking back and forth from an unknown force. Finally it seemed to end and Ayako began to sway where she stood. Hayate, realizing what was happening, announced the winner, but Neji wasn't listening. Neji powered up another Juken strike and aimed for Ayako's heart. Ayako! Yugito shouted as she saw what was happening, but realized she was too far away to do anything. Everyone else saw it as well, and even though they realized they were too far away, was about jump over the railing to try and stop Neji from killing the Kumo Kunoichi. It was all for naught as Neji hand hit Ayako's chest, right where her heart would be. Only for Ayako to disappear in a puff of smoke and be replaced with a log. Eyes widened as they recognized the signs of a kawarimi but were confused about how it happened, since Ayako had been pretty much depleted of chakra and her tenketsu were undoubtedly closed off even if she did have some left in her reserves. It was then that people noticed Ayako on the other side of the arena, directly behind Neji, and in the arms of one Uzumaki Naruto. What the hell was that, Tem? Naruto shouted as he gently laid a barely conscious Ayako on the ground. Neji looked surprised as he spun around, but glared when he realized who it was. Uzumaki, you shouldn't interfere in another's battle. The battle was over, shitstain. Naruto growled out the words. While he knew this was a battle and people got hurt in them, what Neji did was uncalled for and vicious in the blonde's mind. Were you not listening to the proctor announcing you as the winner? Naruto stood up and backed away from Ayako as Yugito and several medics ran out to Ayako and get her on a stretcher. He looked at the girl who had lost conscious some time ago and growled. While he did not know her, he hated it when people were unnecessarily cruel to others, especially women, since his two greatest friends and one of the people he looked up to most were women. He turned back to Neji and his eyes flashed red for a second. You'd better hope I don't fight your sorry ass in the finals. Because if I do, I'm going to knock it back to the age of the Raikudo Sennin. Guy appeared beside Neji and placed a hand on his shoulder. Neji, I'm disappointed in you. I know why you hate Kumo, but blaming it on someone that was not responsible for what happened is just as wrong as what they did. Neji sneered as he shrugged Guy's hand off and went up to the stairs. Sighing, Naruto walked back up as well to see his teammates and several other people staring at him in surprise. What? Is there something on my face? Dobi, how did you move so fast? Asked Sasuke. Naruto gave a nonchalant shrug. I've been working on my speed. Sasuke frowned as Naruto walked past him. The blonde leaned against the railing as everyone turned their attention back to the board. Naruto winced as he stared at his wrist and the dent that was in his guard from Neji's attack. It looks like my speed jutsu is still incomplete. I should have been able to move fast enough to not get hit. He made a mental note of any other injuries and grimaced as he sensed the minor pain in his legs. It was a good thing he had been expecting something to happen, or he would have not been able to use the technique at all due to the time it took to prepare, and even then it still hurt. "What technique are you oh?" Kyuubi said as she went through his memories to see what he was talking about. "It looks close to finished though. It's definitely faster than that Shunshin you ninja use, that's for sure. That's because I made it combat-oriented. I noticed back in Nami that Shunshin had several powerful weaknesses aside from the standard swirl of leaves or smoke. That kind of covering only works on lower-level opponents and it's easier to track, so I need something better. Well, when we get out of here I will help you where I can." Kyuubi reflected on how odd it felt for her to actually offer some help to someone, but justified herself by saying it was to help with her continued survival. As an afterthought she added, "Though, I'm only really good within the techniques I myself created." Naruto gave the equivalent of raising a mental eyebrow as Kyuubi offered help. For a moment he thought about rejecting it, but soon realized that having someone with as much knowledge as Kyuubi may prove beneficial. "Thanks Kyuubi," he said before turning his attention to the board to see who would fight next. Haruno Sakura vs. Sabaku no Temari. Temari smirked as she jumped down the railing onto the arena floor. "Looks like I get another fangirl. How boring. You won't be talking like that when I beat you." Sakura sneered as she walked down, angry that this Suna bitch was actually calling her out on her fangirlish tendencies. "Chaa. We'll kick her ass." Inner Sakura shouted. Seeing that the two girls seemed to be ready, Hayate called the match, Hajime. Sakura ran at Temari and create 3 Bunshin, making the blonde pig-tailed girl sneer. What a pathetic academy-level tactic. If this was all the girl was capable of, then she might as well just end it. Temari whipped out her fan and swung it. Kamatechi number Jutsu, wind scythe Jutsu. Sakura was hit by a large blast of cutting winds that slammed her into the opposite wall where she lost consciousness. Everyone in the arena sweat dropped at how pathetic the battle was. "Kakashi, did you teach her anything?" asked Kurenai, disgusted at the performance of the pink-haired girl. Kakashi sighed. "I did give her a few scrolls with several genjutsu, and some training exercises to increase her reserves, but it seems she never practiced outside of team training." "Kakashi, I think you just won the Understatement of the Year award," Naruto snorted. "That girl spends almost all of her time stalking Sasuke, or plotting the many ways in which she can rape him." Sasuke shuddered at the thought and then tossed a glare at Naruto. "I really hate you, Dobi." Naruto just grinned. Kinyuta Dosu vs. Yakushi Kabuto. Kabuto looked at his sensei to see the man give a subtle shake of his head. "I see, well I suppose I can at least make this a good fight." As the battle begun, Kabuto threw several shuriken at Dosu, all of which were deflected. When Dosu closed the distance he threw out his melody arm, hitting Kabuto, only for said genin to burst into smoke and a log to take his place. Kabuto appeared behind the genin and managed to hit Dosu in the back of the head, making him stumble forward. Spinning around, Dosu tried to attack Kabuto, only to be met with the same conclusion of the first one. "You know that will only work on me for so long," Dosu said, as he spun around and used his melody arm to block a kunai. "Then it just means I'll have to come up with something else," Kabuto replied as he pushed up his glasses. "You're welcome to try." Dosu charged back in and aimed his melody arm at Kabuto. At the last second he changed to his left arm. Spinning around he shot his melody arm at Kabuto, who had appeared behind him when he used Kawarimi. Kabuto managed to jump back, but still received the brunt of Dosu's sound attack, making him drop to the floor and throw up. Dosu smirked when he saw Kabuto try to stand up, only to fall back down. "It won't matter how many times you try, you won't be standing up for a while." Kabuto grunted, "I guess you're right. Of course I have to play along, it would not do for a spy like me to be seen as too strong." "Proctor-san, I surrender." Hayate nodded. Shusa Kinyuta Dosu. Hyuga Hinata vs. Akamichi Choji. "Let's make this a good battle, nay, Hinata?" asked Choji, giving the lavender-eyed girl a smile. Hi, Hinata said, feeling both glad and slightly sad that she had to fight someone as nice as Choji. Hajime. Once the match started, both Hinata and Choji began running through several hand seals. Byakugan. Veins appeared in Hinata's eyes and around her temple. Baika number Jutsu. Choji's body expanded to nearly twice his original size, turning him into a big round ball. His head and all of his limbs retracted into his clothes and chakra began to pour out of the holes. Choji was still not finished as he flew into the air where he began to rotate at high speeds. Nikuden Sensha, human boulder. Choji's voice was still heard perfectly despite the boy's head being hidden in his clothes. Hinata jumped to the left, dodging the large rolling ball. However, she could see with her Byakugan that Choji was coming back. She was forced to run, heading towards the wall. At the last second she swerved to the right, making Choji crashed into the wall while still spinning. Who do you think will win? Tenten asked Naruto as they watched the battle. It's hard to say, Naruto said as he observed the battle. Hinata seems to have more confidence than she did at the academy, though I can't remember much since she never talked to me. And I don't know the techniques she uses aside from the basic information I have on the Byakugan and Juken. He shrugged. Frankly, I think this can go either way. Kurenai listened to the conversation before turning her attention back to the fight. Even if she doesn't win, I'm sure she'll surprise you and everyone else. Hinata has been working hard to become stronger, and is well on her way towards doing so. Hinata ran up to him while he couldn't move and attempted to use a Juken strike, but due to how large Choji was while using his jutsu it could not hit the tenketsu points and the attacks merely stung. She was forced to jump back when Choji redirected his spin and launched himself at her. Hinata continued to dodge the attacks by the large genin, but was starting to get tired. Knowing she had to end the battle soon, she turned around and began to spin. Kaden! Hinata cried out as Choji slammed into the dome of chakra. The two jutsu seemed to push against each other as Choji tried to break through the barrier and Hinata tried to keep from collapsing. However, something had to give eventually, and that was Hinata's jutsu. There was a large explosion of chakra as the Kaden was released in a violent manner. Both Hinata and Choji were sent sailing back. Choji to hit the wall on the opposite end, and Hinata rolled along the ground before settling down. Both were unconscious. Due to both fighters being unconscious, I declare this match a draw. Hayata coughed as the medics rushed out of the field. Up in the stands, Neji grit his teeth as he saw Hinata use one of the main house jutsu. He had never expected someone as weak as Hinata to know that jutsu. Even if he could tell she had only recently learned it, he felt it was an insult to have such a simpering little girl use it. Looks like your teammate's about to explode, Naruto whispered to Tenten. He actually looks really constipated right now. Be nice, Naruto-kun, Tenten said with a small giggle. She took a glance at Neji and giggled again, since he really did look constipated with how red his face was. Uzumaki Naruto vs. Sabaku no Gaara. Oh look, you're up, Tenten got the blonde's attention. Naruto looked up and grinned. Finally. I guess they were saving the best for last. He was just about to go down when a hand stopped him. Turning around he saw Shino. I suggest you just forfeit, Uzumaki-san, the bug user suggested. I saw this one fight in the Forest of Death. As a fellow shinobi and comrade, I feel it's my duty to inform you that it would be most logical if you forfeited. Naruto rolled his eyes. Yeah, well, thanks for that, Shino. I feel so warm and fuzzy inside to know you care. Naruto pulled Shino's hand off of him. Now if you excuse me, I have some ass to kick. Well, he's dead, Kankuro commented from where he stood next to Temari. No way will that brat survive against Gaara. Temari could not help but nod in agreement. It's too bad too, he's pretty hot. He walked down the stadium floor where Gaara was already waiting. Sorry for the delay, but the Naruto Express is now here and ready to kick your ass back to Suna, so please be sure to keep your hands at your sides and buckle your seatbelt for safety. Gaara merely stared at him with that blank expression that held a barely contained bloodlust. Tough crowd, Naruto mumbled. Are both fighters ready? Hayate asked. Gaara nodded while Naruto smirked. Hajime. Hayate barely had time to jump away as sand burst from Gaara's gourd. Despite being surprised, Naruto was able to get out of the way as the sand closed in on him. Disappearing in a burst of speed as he ran to the left at speeds far greater than any of the Genin minus Team 9 had seen, though the members of Team 9 were still surprised by how fast the blonde Genin was. Less than a second later he on the opposite side of the arena. So he uses sand as a form of attack. Naruto narrowed his eyes in thought. He would need to gather more information about this Genin's abilities before he could come up with any kind of sound strategy against him. He's nearly as fast as Lee now. Tenten thought in shock. She had watched many of Naruto and Lee's spars, and so she was surprised when the blonde showed a speed he had not previously possessed. Is it due to his change of appearance? Gaara also seemed surprised as Naruto dodged his sand. He looked over to see the blonde on the opposite side and sent his sand over there. However, once again Naruto dodged the attack, trying to ascertain just how fast that sand moved. It seems like it takes several seconds to change direction. That means when he attacks I have about 10 seconds before it gets back to him from this distance. Naruto watched as the sand closed in on his position. He swerved to the right, dodging the sand before he made his way towards Gaara. Naruto appeared in front of Gaara and aimed a kick for him, only for more sand to burst out of the gourd and protect the Suna genin from getting hit. Naruto was forced to kick himself away as the rest of the sand came back and tried to grab him. What the hell? How much sand does he keep in that thing? Naruto wondered. Naruto, that sand of his seems to be an automatic defense, Kyuubi supplied as she watched the battle and did her best to analyze the blonde's opponent. I don't know if you've noticed yet, but it's not even in his control unless he sends it at you. Naruto was forced into a series of backflips as Gaara sent several tendrils of sand crashing towards him. So you're saying it's being controlled by someone or something else? Naruto held back a curse as he dodged another tendril, leaping onto a wall as the sand chased him. I'm calling foul play. It's more than that, I'm afraid, Kyuubi said in an ominous tone. That boy holds the Ikibi no Shukaku. Growling, Naruto linked his fists together as he spun around. Fuden, Kamikaze Seiken. He thrust his fists out and a giant blast of wind smashed into the sand, dispersing it. So you're telling me he's a Jinchuriki as well? Well, that's just fucking peachy. Shit. Naruto cursed as he jumped away from another tendril of sand that attempted to impale him. This sand is really starting to piss me off. Yes, he holds the Ikibi, the one-tailed tanuki. He is the weakest of the Biju from I know, but is still not one to be underestimated. As you can already tell, it gives this child complete control of sand, which makes him quite a handful. So I noticed, Naruto replied dryly as he channeled wind chakra into his fists. Fuden, Kamikaze Seiken. The wind blasted away Gaara's sand and Naruto decided it was time to turn up the heat. Pumping yokai through his muscles, Naruto shot off like a rocket, going as fast as Lee could with his weight off. To everyone except for the Hokage, the Jonin senseis and a select few of the genin, Naruto had disappeared. He reappeared right in front of a shocked Gaara, threw a fist at his face. Eat this. The sand that had not been after Naruto tried to protect the red head, but the whiskered blonde's fist plowed right through it, sending the red head sailing back to hit the wall behind him. Naruto grinned. Let's see how you like that. I don't believe it. Temari shouted, completely shocked at what just happened. He just hit Gaara. Kankuro and Baki just stared at the arena wide-eyed, unable to comprehend what happened. No one had ever managed to do what this genin just did. He's as fast as Lee is without his weights. Tenten said in surprise. She had seen Naruto fight plenty of times, as well as sparred with him. So she knew he had been fairly fast, but he had never shown this kind of speed. It has to have something to do with his transformation. There's no other explanation for his newfound speed. Yosh! Naruto-kun's youth is blazing. Lee shouted. Lee, it seems you've inspired this young man to fan his youthful flames. Guy shouted, seemingly in agreement. It looks like we're going to have to fan your own flames of youth to match Naruto-kun's. I understand, Guy-sensei. I will endeavor to increase my youthful flames. I will increase my weights by 200 pounds by the end of the month. And if I cannot do that, I'll run around Konoha on my pinkies. And if you cannot do that, I'll climb the Hokage monument with a 10-ton boulder on my back. Tenten, Neji and everyone else did their best to ignore the two, making challenges that sounded more and more outrageous as time went on. Gaara stood up, and to Naruto's surprise, the redhead was grinning. It was then that Naruto noticed cracks appear on Gaara's skin. What the fuck? Is that sand? That's it, Uzumaki. Make me feel alive. Gaara shouted, and with those words the sand started shooting at him again. Naruto growled as he began dodging sand left and right. It seemed to be even faster than before. He spared a second's glance at Gaara and saw him making hand gestures. He must be using his hands to increase the speed of his attacks. Naruto growled as he blasted towards Gaara, bulldozing right past through the sand as he body slammed into Gaara. The blonde continued on until he smashed Gaara into the wall, grinning when he heard Gaara gasp in pain as several cracks formed along the point of impact. Naruto jumped back as Gaara slumped to the floor. Nothing beats a sand shield out of the way like good old-fashioned blunt force trauma. You hurt me. Gaara screamed as a bit of blood dribbled out of his mouth. I'll kill you. Sand seemed to come at Naruto from all directions, making him curse as he tried to dodge. However, even with his speed he could not dodge them all, nor could he pick up enough momentum to plow through the sand, and eventually one of the tendrils grabbed onto him. Gaara began grinning maniacally as he directed his sand to slam Naruto into everything he could: walls, the floor, the ceiling, the railings. No one could keep out the wince as Naruto was smashed into seemingly everything. Naruto groaned as Gaara's sand threw him into the wall where he left a large crater. Fuck. That hurts. The blonde spit out some blood that had begun to congeal in his mouth. He had never felt so sore in his life. I think I would take playing death tag with Anko over this. Falling to the ground, Naruto coughed up several wads of blood. He looked terrible. His cloak had been ripped to shreds sometime during the thrashing he had received. His body had several large black bruises on his skin, almost enough that it looked like his entire body had turned into one large bruise. Many of the genin watched in shock as Naruto stood back up, unable to comprehend how he could even move after the beatdown he had received. Naruto looked up to see a wave of sand coming towards him. Fuck. He began to speed through a set of hand seals, hoping he could complete them in time. Futen. Kamikaze no Tatsumaki. Naruto thrust his palms out and two large tornadoes blasted from them, destroying the wave of sand Gaara had created. Kyuubi, do you have any ideas on how to beat this guy? Because I'm all out. Naruto rolled to the left as sand shot at him, crashing into the floor before it continued to follow him. Kyuubi did her best to contain her irritation as she spoke. I'm trying to think of something, Naruto. Just give me a minute. I don't think we have a minute. Naruto dodged another tendril of sand, only for one to catch his left arm from behind. Gaara grinned as Naruto struggled to get rid the sand off his arm. He made his hand into a fist. Sabaku Susu. There was a loud crunch as blood burst out from the sand. Ah! Naruto's scream tore through the arena, and several of the genin, mainly those from the Rookie 9, blanched in shock and horror. Gaara began to laugh maniacally as he pulled the sand away for a moment to reveal the stump Naruto now had for an arm. Yes, that's it. Scream for me. Let me feel alive. Oh dear, Kami-sama, Tenten whispered as Naruto clutched at his now gone arm. Yugito, who had gotten back from making sure her friend was alright, grimaced as she noticed the blonde missing his arm. Many of the other genin could not say anything. Sakura threw up. Shino looked on solemnly. Hinata, who had just woken up, looked like she was about to cry. Ino, Choji and Shikamaru all looked like they were also on the verge of vomiting. All of the Jonin senseis looked at the blonde boy in shock, except for one who licked his lips at seeing how resilient the boy was. It's too bad he holds the Kyuubi. He would make a nice vessel. However, none of them were as bad as Anko, who looked ready to murder Gaara. Oh no, Sarutobi paled as he saw his surrogate grandson's condition. I need to stop this before it gets out of hand. Hayate. Hayate looked over at the Hokage before nodding. Due to the fact that Naruto is unable to battle, I hereby. No. Naruto roared, drawing everyone's attention to him as he stood up. Don't even think about stopping this match. I'm not done yet. This battle isn't over until I say it's over. Everyone looked at Naruto like he was crazy. However, the look of utter determination in his eyes left little room for argument. That's good, Uzumaki. Keep struggling. That way I can feel more alive when I kill you. Gaara crowed, his voice holding nothing more than madness in it. Naruto glared at Gaara. Despite the pain he was in, you're not gonna be laughing like that after I beat your ass. Q. Any ideas? Well, I can regenerate your arm if you want. The vixen offered, but it's going to hurt. I think I can take it. Now let's do this so I can kick some Tanuki ass. Kyuubi sighed a bit as she prepared for what she was going to do. Brace yourself. Naruto felt Kyuubi's yokai coming out of the seal and grit his as he felt it travel along his body and to his arm. Everyone watched in shock as the red energy from the Kyuubi was released. Naruto's eyes flashed red as his whisker marks began to thicken. All of the Konoha ninja who were old enough to have been there during the Kyuubi attack recognized the chakra. I don't believe it. He is using its chakra. Sarutobi watched as the boy grit his teeth in pain. I didn't realize he could. Or does the Kyuubi have something to do with this? What an intense feeling. Nibi said, so this is the Kyuubi's power. This is the Kyuubi. It's so potent, and that bloodlust. Yugito felt a trickle of sweat pour down her face. Temari, Kankuro and Baki were also shocked and, to be honest, fearful at the feeling of power emanating from the blonde. What kind of power is this? Asked Temari. I can't believe he is actually consciously using its chakra. Kakashi looked at his genin in shock. A trickle of sweat formed on his brow. When did he learn to draw upon it? Many of the genin were doing far worse than the others. Shino was beginning to sweat under the intense pressure and killing intent emitting from Naruto. Hinata looked like she was about to pass out. Sakura and Ino were trembling as the yokai washed over them. Shikamaru was sweating under the intensity of the powerful and vile feeling chakra, however he was also staring at the blonde like he was some kind of puzzle. It was Sasuke however that was doing the worst. Despite the fact that the killing intent was far greater than any he had ever felt, he was glaring at the blonde. How can he have that much power? It's not possible. He felt that he should have that power. The cursed seal on his neck flared a little bit, only for the seal on his neck to force it back down. Naruto growled in agony as he felt Kyuubi's chakra suddenly burst, the ground under him splintered and cracked. Then bones shot out of Naruto's stump, forming the shape of an arm and hand as blood splattered everywhere. Kyuubi's yokai began to cover the bony appendages, the red energy flowing over it. Everyone watched in a mixture of shock and awe as muscles began to form along the bone, crawling and writhing like a phantom. When the muscles had finished forming, new skin began to crawl along his arm, starting at the shoulder. When the pain stopped, Naruto sighed in relief before moving his hand in front of his face and clenching it to test the nerves. You were right, Q, that hurt like a bitch. Still, thanks for the help. You're welcome, Naruto, Kyuubi replied, caught slightly off guard by him thanking her. By the way, I think I have a way to beat Shukaku's vessel. Well, lay it on me then, cause I'm running on empty. If you can heat that sand armor on his skin to the point it turns to glass, and infuse it with my yokai, it will trap him inside. Only problem is I don't have a fire jutsu, and I don't know if there are any fire jutsu that would be powerful enough to do that. Don't worry, that's where I come in. I'll give you some of my yokai, then just direct it to your arms and I'll take care of the rest. Right, I have no clue what you're planning, but I always liked flying by the seat of my pants anyway, makes things exciting. He heard a giggle in his mind and turned his attention back to the outside world. He smirked at Gaara's surprised expression. Now then, I hope you're ready to receive your beating. Rather than get angry or scared, Gaara began to smile, then he began to laugh. Yes. Yes, Uzumaki. I knew there was something different about you. Mother wants your blood. Sand began flying towards the blonde who disappeared in a burst of speed. Yeah, well, you can tell your mother to suck my cock. Cause that's the closest thing she's getting to my blood. Hit me, Kyuubi. Right. Naruto felt Kyuubi's yokai coming and did his best to direct it to his hands, causing them to become covered in a red layer of yokai. Then his hands burst into flames, white flames that felt like they were hotter than the fires of Amaterasu. Sand tendrils shot towards Naruto, but he merely swatted at them, turning the sand into glass and shattering it. Grinning Naruto appeared right next to a shocked Gaara and thrust his hands out. The area was bathed in a large explosion that covered the two ninja. Naruto-kun, Tenten and a few of the Konoha genin shouted at seeing the large white flames. Gaara, Temari yelled in shock and worry. Sure, her brother may have been a psychopathic killer, but he was still her brother. When the flames cleared and revealed another shock. Naruto was standing there, looking no worse for wear, except a few new burns that covered his body. However, the real shock was Gaara, who was completely encased in glass that had red energy forming over his form that was coming from the hand Naruto had placed on it. He's not dead yet, Naruto rasped out, feeling like he had just run a marathon on top of getting his crushed by the Hokage monument. However, if you don't proclaim me the victor soon, he will run out of oxygen, because you can bet your ass I'm not letting him out until then. Sarutobi coughed, getting Hayate to snap out of his shock. Alright, Shusa Uzumaki Naruto. For several seconds there was absolute silence as people tried to comprehend what happened. I don't believe it, Kankuro broke the silence. He beat Gaara, Temari choked, unable to believe her eyes. Finally the others realized what had happened and some of the other genin began to cheer. Hell yeah Naruto. You showed him. Sakura yelled out, unable to actually contain her excitement at seeing such an amazing reversal. Excellent job Naruto. Kakashi shouted, surprising many of the other jonins since he had never been known to show that much emotion, but he didn't care at the moment and was too excited to see his student beat such a powerful opponent. That's showing him Naruto-kun. Tenten shouted as she cupped her hands to project her voice. Atta boy Gaki. Anko yelled, feeling ridiculously proud of the blonde who had come so far and managed to take on someone like Gaara. Man, that battle was totally troublesome, Shikamaru murmured, though he still clapped with the others. I know man, Choji agreed, I wonder what that powerful chakra was. So do I. Shikamaru narrowed his eyes, troublesome, now I might actually have to investigate something. Man, that was a scary battle, Asuma commented, wiping some sweat from his brow before he lit his cigarette. I know, Kurenai agreed even as she clapped. I can't believe he was able to use that chakra, and to such a degree. I've never heard of regrowing lost limbs. Asuma chuckled, well, Pops always told me that boy would surprise us. And I thought I was surprised when he started asking questions about elemental manipulation. Kurenai looked over at Asuma in surprise, but did not comment, mainly because she did not know what to say. Sarutobi clapped enthusiastically, proud of how far his surrogate grandson had come. To think he beat a known Jinchuriki after only 6 months of real training. And the amount of control he had over the Kyuubi's chakra. I've never even heard of it being able to regrow lost limbs. I'm not even sure Mito-sama had been able to do that. Granted she never used much of its chakra but still. Unbelievable. Yugito thought as she also found herself clapping, that was an incredible match. I think even Kurabi would have been impressed with that. I didn't realize he was so strong. I have to agree kitten, not many humans his age can be that strong. The large two-tailed cat paused for a moment and Yugito could almost feel its smirk. You know, with the way you're acting right now, one would almost think you're attracted to him. Nibby. Now is not the time to be thinking about such things. Besides, he's what, 5 years younger than me. I can't date someone younger than me. Bah, 5 years isn't that much of an age difference kitten. Besides you're a ninja, aren't you? Old enough to kill, old enough to have hot passionate sex, or something like that. Damn it Nibby. Shut up. He may be strong. Hell, he might even be just a little below my own level of strength and I won't deny he's handsome. But he's still just a 13-year kid. All Yugito got from her tenant was a perverse giggle, which sounded so completely wrong its demonic tone. Seriously, why, out of all the Biju, did she have to get the perverted one? It's like the damn thing got a kick out of taunting her with its stupid remarks. I know it just acts like that to torture me. Why couldn't she have just gotten one like Kurabi's? Mellow and uncaring, she was sure that she and Hachibi would have gotten along so much better, at least if what Kurabi told her about his Biju was to be believed. Of course I would have had to actually fight it in order to subdue it, so maybe I would be better off with the snarky one. You can deny your attraction all you want kitten. But remember, I live inside of you so I feel what's going on. You can't deny that seeing that young Mon's strength didn't turn you on at least a little. Yugito blushed heavily at that comment. She turned her head so her Jonin sensei wouldn't take notice of it. Naruto grinned as he released his hand on the glassed Gaara, who was standing there with a look of perpetual shock on his features. Falling on his back the blonde began to laugh, despite the fact that each laugh he took sent pain shooting through his nerves. Gaara. Naruto moved his head to see Temari trying to find some way to free Gaara from the glass. Temari-san, Naruto got her attention, Gaara's fine, he has enough oxygen in there to last about an hour. I suggest taking him somewhere and start chipping him out. Unless he can get out on his own. Temari looked at him for a moment before nodding in thanks. She ordered both her sensei and younger brother down before yelling for medics to help her get her youngest brother out of the glass prison. Feeling exhaustion settle in, Naruto passed out. The last thing he saw were several shadows crowding around him. Chapter 20, The Oddest Things. Opening his eyes, Naruto had to blink several times as he saw the by now familiar red eyes of Kyuubi staring at him. He opened his mouth but it took a moment for him to actually speak. mourning Kyuubi, he trailed off as he realized he had just greeted the woman whom mere days ago he had hated with a passion, and in some ways still felt resentment for what she had done to him. Kyuubi saw the flickering emotion and lingering resentment in his eyes and felt the odd urge to flinch away from them. For a moment she was unsure what to do, as this necessity of being nice was completely foreign waters to her, and regardless of the fact that it would benefit her to be nice, it went against her nature. However, she was able to pull herself back together and tried her best at making light of the situation. Actually, I think it's night right now. Though since you've been out of it for a while I can't be too sure. So how badly was I injured then? Asked Naruto, closing his eyes for a moment as he relaxed into the bed that Kyuubi had in the mindscape. Bad enough that you were unconscious when you first entered the mindscape, Kyuubi replied. You have extensive damage to your body. Aside from internal bleeding, you have several fractured ribs, several pieces of those fractured ribs stuck in your muscle, and severe head trauma. Kyuubi gave him a cheeky grin and attempted another joke, altogether not very good. Yeah, well, considering I was fighting another Jinchuriki, a psychotic one at that, I'll take a victory of attrition over death any day. Naruto looked up at her and favored her with a rare smile. I have you to thank for that victory, Kyuubi. Kyuubi looked away from him as he thanked her, a light hint of pink on her cheeks. She had never had these kinds of interactions before, and so it was leaving her rather flustered. Not that she would let Naruto in on that, actually that battle was almost all you. I just helped at the end, as well as regrew your entire arm. Naruto grimaced as phantom pain hit his arm. I don't ever want to experience that again. Then you'll need to get stronger, because there are tons of people stronger than Gaara out there. She gave Naruto a pointed look. To be honest, you can consider yourself extremely lucky to have even beaten him at all. Had he used his Biju's chakra, I doubt you would have won. I know, Naruto sighed. He could not deny that his win was a combination of luck and sheer stubborn determination. He looked at Kyuubi. You still up for helping me? I'd better be, Kyuubi replied with something akin to a half smirk, half smile. My continued survival depends on you, so if I don't make you as strong as possible, then that leaves me in a dangerous situation. She looked away from Naruto with a small frown. Despite the fact that I am stuck in here, I have no desire to die. Naruto rolled his eyes. Well, thanks, I guess. Even though you're doing this for selfish reasons, it will at least still make me strong. He watched her eyes shift and noticed a small flicker of emotion. For a second she had looked oddly vulnerable. It was gone a moment later, but he had managed to catch it and remembered that he had been going to at least try and make an attempt at being cordial. I do appreciate your help. Kyuubi looked back at him and he gave her a tired smile. With your help I'll be kicking ass and taking names in no time. Kyuubi watched Naruto as his eyes closed, his breathing evened out and he eventually went back to sleep. She stared at him for several minutes before tentatively scooting closer to where the blonde lay. It was several more minutes after that before she reached out with a hand and began to gently run it through the blonde's hair. It's surprisingly soft, Kyuubi thought with an odd sense of wonder. When she had said she never touched a human before, while it may have been an exaggeration, she had been partly truthful. Prior to the first several years of her life, when she had first created the body she was in now, she had never allowed a human to touch her. However, his hair felt oddly different from that of other humans she had touched. To sat her curiosity of the creatures when she had first awoken. It feels a lot like my fur. She stopped for a moment and withdrew her hand, fearing she had woken him when Naruto sucked in a breath. However, after several seconds he released it and his breathing evened out. Sighing in relief, she went back to her ministration of gently combing her hand through his hair. The Yondaime Kazekage stood at the designated meeting place where he listened to a report given by one of Orochimaru's henchmen. As much as it disgusted him to side with that snake, he knew that he could not beat Konoha on his own. And so he allied himself with Orochimaru, and suffered through the reports he received, as well as the snake Sanin himself constantly berating and insulting him with that silver tongue of his. However, as he listened the last part of the report he became startled. You mean to tell me Gaara lost to a genin? The one who was speaking to him, a young teen with white hair, brown eyes and 2 red dots on his forehead, nodded. It seems this boy, one Uzumaki Naruto, managed to surprise your son and use a powerful Kaiden jutsu of some kind of turn his sand armor into glass. It trapped him inside and allowed the boy to win in the preliminaries. The case cage scowled as he thought of what this would. If Gaara lost, then I doubt there is any hope for us to defeat Konoha, especially if he was defeated by a mere genin. The plan would also be ruined now, the case cage realized. The whole plan had hindered on Gaara being in the finals and turning into his Shukaku form to give a surprise attack in the middle of the exams, smashing Konoha's main force before his and Orochimaru's men even got there, with Gaara no longer in the finals. Orochimaru-sama has ensured me that your son's defeat was a mere fluke. A matter of surprise and luck, nothing more. And yet, without Gaara in the finals all of our plans are ruined, the case cage frowned. There is no way for us to defeat Konoha without having Gaara in their walls to strike them by surprise. The young teen bowed his head. Orochimaru-sama has come up with another plan to defeat Konoha. One he believes is better than the previous one we had. And one that will no doubt lead to more of my shinobi's deaths. While the case cage saw everyone and everything as either a tool or worthless, he did understand the value of good soldiers and the need to keep them alive. And he knew that any plan that snake of a man created would put his shinobi on the front to take more damage than the man's Odo forces. No, with our original plan null and void, I will not support a campaign against Konoha, unless I feel the time is right. I see. The teen said slowly, that's too bad. It happened too fast for the case cage to see. A flash of light, and that was it before he, along with the 4 Anbu he had brought to guard him, died. Kukuku, Orochimaru chuckled as he appeared behind the fallen case cage, his hand holding onto the Kusanagi blade as it dripped with the blood of the case cage. It's too bad he didn't agree to my new proposition. If he had, he may have lived. Still, I feel it's better this way. He looked over at his most fanatically loyal servant. How are you holding up, Kimimaro-kun? I am feeling fine, Orochimaru-sama, Kimimaro replied. Kabuto-san has assured me that I will be able to take part in the coming battle. Good. I am pleased to see your disease is being kept in check for now. I have great need of you. Orochimaru licked his lips. Naruto awoke to see the white-tiled ceiling of a hospital. He blinked a few times as he registered where he was before scowling. Great. I wake up only to find myself stuck in a nightmare of bland ceilings, white walls and that damned smell of antiseptics. Well, I do apologize, Naruto-kun, however it was necessary for you to come here so you could be healed. Hearing the familiar voice, Naruto turned around to see Sarutobi sitting on a chair next to his bed. I'm pleased to see you're awake. You gave us quite the scare with your performance, you know. Oji-san, Naruto yawned as he pushed himself into a sitting position. Be careful not to move too much. The doctors said you were extremely badly damaged, Sarutobi said. Naruto looked up and grinned. Ah. You worry too much, Oji-san. The blonde ignored the protests of Sarutobi as he stood up and began to stretch. I'm definitely sore. It feels a lot like someone decided to smash me with the Hokage monument. He looked over at the Hokage. How long have I been out? About 2 days. Sarutobi answered, watching as Naruto took off the bandages he had on. Do you really have to take those off? You might still be injured. Naruto chuckled. Yeah, I'm sure. I don't want to look like a mummy while I walk around Konoha. And I'm perfectly fine, a tad tender is all. Sarutobi sighed and shook his head in exasperation, but knew that trying to stop the blonde was pointless and there were other things they needed to talk about. Naruto-kun, I believe there are some things you and I need to discuss. Okay. What kind of things did you want to talk about, Oji-san? Naruto decided to play innocent, though he had a fairly good idea on what this was about. Sarutobi gave him a deadpan look. I believe you know what I want to talk about, Naruto-kun. I know you are more intelligent than you sometimes let on. Naruto sighed as he sat back down on the bed. You want to talk about me using Kyuubi's Yuki, right? Sarutobi nodded. Yes, I would. I would like to know when you learned to use the chakra. Well, I wouldn't say I learned to use it. Naruto tapped his chin, wondering how best to broach this subject. In the end he just decided to be honest. The old Hokage had always been understanding and he was sure he would be with this too. My beatdown of Gaara was in fact the first time I had used it since Nami. Wait, that's not quite true since I had also used it against Orochimaru in the forest, though this was the first time I used it willingly and stayed myself while using it. I see. Sarutobi wished he could smoke his pipe right now, but not even he could get away with smoking in a hospital. And how were you able to channel its chakra? Kyuubi gave it to me, Naruto shrugged. Upon seeing the Hokage's incredulous expression, Naruto blinked. What? She did? Kyuubi and I are all cool now. He paused when he listened to that statement in his head. Well, we're not exactly cool, but we're no longer at each other's throats. Ah, I see. Kyuubi and you are. Sarutobi frowned as he registered the two things Naruto said. The first, Naruto said he and Kyuubi were friends now. The second, did you say she? As in the Kyuubi no Kitsune is a girl. Naruto winced and held his head for a moment as he heard Kyuubi start to yell out threats to Sarutobi. Yes, she's a girl, and she wants me to tell you that if she hears one more sexist comment about her gender, she's going to make sure you suffer untold amounts of torment before the Shinigami comes to take you. Sarutobi shivered a bit at the implied threat, despite the fact that there was no way for Kyuubi to do anything of the sort. I see, now you said you and Kyuubi are on good terms. Of course I did. We're on cordial terms. Naruto thought of his statement for a second before nodding. I think that's the best way of putting it. And how do you know Kyuubi is a she? Asked Sarutobi as he eyed the genin wearily. Naruto chuckled. If you had been in the seal you would not have had to ask me that. Trust me when I say that there is no way she can be anything but female. She has this human form, half-human form that she introduced herself with when talking to me. I doubt I could find many if any woman who is more attractive than her. As he registered his words his mind blanked for a second. Despite what he had said being completely true he was surprised he had said them. Perhaps the damage from his battle with Gaara had caused a severe case of head trauma. Or maybe Anko had rubbed off on him even more than he had initially thought, since that sounded like something she would say. Kyuubi, having heard what Naruto said from the seal, smirked. Why Naruto, you truly know what to say to make a lady feel special. Naruto had to resist the rather large urge to snort. Try not to get used to it. I doubt I'm in my right mind right now. And while I won't deny that you are very physically attractive, it will take a long time before I would consider speaking of you in such an intimate manner were my currently screwed on right. It will take more than a pretty face for me to be friendly with you. Within the seal, Kyuubi frowned for a moment. She supposed she should have expected him to give out that kind of response. It was a natural reaction people had to someone hurting them as much as she had hurt Naruto. But, you know I am trying to be nice to you. I know, Naruto sighed. I do realize that, but you are also the cause of a lot of problems that I have no clue how to deal with right now. He felt an odd fluctuation in his seal. It felt almost like a brief flicker of irritation and slight depression, only it was not his. However, he put any thoughts on the odd sensation out of his mind for the moment. The Hokage had to take a moment to register that new information. He decided to file it under the too troublesome to open section of his brain. How can you be sure that it's not just a trick? The Kyuubi is a malevolent and cunning being. One who nearly destroyed Konoha, I might add. Naruto shook his head. I'm sure she's genuine. He looked over at his surrogate grandfather. At the very least I do know that she cannot influence me due to the seal. She admitted herself, not in so many words, and she was rather angry at the time because of it, so I doubt she had a reason to lie. She also told me that her helping me is a matter of self-preservation. If I die she dies, and she does not want to die right now, or ever for that matter. I see. Sarutobi trailed off as he began to think on what he had just heard. Naruto, Kyuubi's voice came in tentatively. Naruto blinked at the odd tone she used. Yes, Kyuubi. Look, tell your Hokage that my attack. Kyuubi paused and Naruto had a feeling she was trying to admit to something that she was either ashamed of or did not want getting out. His thoughts were confirmed a moment later when she spoke again. Tell him that my attack was not of my own making. Not of your own making? Asked Naruto in a tone laced with curiosity. What do you mean, not of your own making? Look, that attack was not my handiwork. Remember what I told you. I may not like humans, but I don't care for bringing myself to kill them. It's simply beneath me to even bother with such a thing. So you're saying someone else attacked Konoha? Naruto asked incredulously. And what, you just happened to be there and knocked over a few buildings, killed a few hundred people? Kyuubi growled at the blonde. Look. It wasn't my fault. I was under Naruto heard a sigh from the mindscape before the redhead started in a softer voice. I was not in control of my actions at the time, okay? There was someone who was capable of casting a high-level genjutsu that controlled my actions. Naruto put a thoughtful frown on his face as he listened to Kyuubi's defense about her actions. It took him a minute to formulate a response, and when he did, his answer surprised him. "I believe you." "You do?" asked Kyuubi, who was also surprised, even more so than the blonde who said it. "Yes." Naruto thought about his reasoning before giving out more information. "Honestly, your attack never really made sense. I mean, I sort of just assumed that Biju were simply mindless beasts, but you're obvious not." He paused, and this time he could clearly feel Kyuubi's shock through the seal. He wondered on that for a moment before shaking his head and getting back on track. "So given what you've told me, it only makes sense." For a long moment Naruto did not hear anything from the vixen in his head. He was about to talk to Sarutobi and inform him of what he knew when. "Thank you." "You're welcome," Naruto responded. "Oji-san," Naruto said, getting the aging Hokage to shake his thoughts away and focus on the young blonde before him. "Yes, Naruto-kun. I believe this may help you come to better terms with what I told you already." Kyuubi was not responsible for the night of the attack. I guess you could say she was not herself. "Wasn't herself?" Sarutobi questioned. "What do you mean wasn't herself?" He watched as Naruto's eyes glazed over for a moment. He must be speaking with the Kyuubi, the old Hokage reasoned. "She said it's okay to tell you. During her attack on Konoha, someone had cast a high-level genjutsu that even she couldn't break out of and controlled her." Naruto shrugged. "I don't know who, since she won't tell me, but apparently that attack wasn't really her fault. Kyuubi is of the belief that slaughtering a village of humans is a task that is beneath her, something that she would not do simply because she is a being of higher power and not one who would give in to their baser instincts." What he says would make sense. Sarutobi's hand twitched as he wished for his pipe. "I have always wondered what had happened that night. With Minato there should have been no issue with the Kyuubi breaking free. Which means someone had to have released the Kyuubi, and I doubt they would have done that unless they were sure they could control it, her. Still, this new information of Kyuubi being a female and not evil, or at least as evil as we were all led to believe, is a contradiction to what I had been told. Mito-sama always said the Kyuubi was a hateful creature. Then again, I can't really imagine a being like Kyuubi attacking for no reason, especially if what Naruto says about her general countenance towards humans is true." He looked over at Naruto. In any event, Naruto does not seem to be under any influence from the Kyuubi, and Jiraiya said the seal was working perfectly when he checked it yesterday. "In the end, I will need to trust Naruto's judgment in this matter, since there is really nothing else I can do." "Oji-san, are you alright?" Naruto asked, waving a hand in front of the Hokage's face. "You're still there, right?" "Huh. Oh yes, Naruto-kun. I apologize, I was thinking for a moment," Sarutobi said. "Reet." Naruto drawled out as he gave the venerable old man a smirk. "You do know that spacing out like that is a sign of old age. You might want to be careful." This coming from the one who continuously calls me old man. "I would think that it wouldn't matter since you'll just call me out on being old anyways," Sarutobi shot back. "Touché." Naruto grinned. "So can I go now? I really want to get back to my shitty-ass apartment so I can lie in my own crap bed, rather than the hospital ones." "I doubt I could keep you here even if I tried," Sarutobi replied in an amused tone. "Go on, you're free to leave. Oh, before I forget." Naruto stopped to changing into the clothes that had been set out for him to look at Sarutobi. "You will be facing Hyuga Neji in the first round of the finals." Naruto looked at Sarutobi and grinned. "Well, that's nice. I wanted to kick that fate-loving prick's ass anyway. I'll need to get in some good training then. Do you know where Kakashi-sensei is?" Sarutobi shook his head. "I believe he went off to train Sasuke for the finals. However, he did tell me to give you this." The Hokage took out a scroll from his robe and tossed it to him. Naruto caught the scroll and looked at it for a second, before pocketing it. "Is there anything else I should know?" The Sandaime Hokage smiled at him. "Yes, there is. You had several visitors come to see you." "Really? Who?" Naruto asked as he put on a large white shirt several sizes too large for him. "Higurashi Tenten was one of them." Sarutobi rubbed his chin. "Most of the rookies who fought in the preliminaries came to see you, and surprisingly you had a visitor from Kumo, a blonde kunoichi by the name of Yugito who made it to the finals." The old Hokage frowned thoughtfully at that. He could not help but wonder what Kumo's Jinchuriki would want with Naruto, Given that village's attempted kidnapping of Hyuga Hinata during the treaty signing, he was feeling weary of letting that woman near the whiskered blonde. Naruto smiled at hearing all the people in his class had come to see him, however he was confused as to why Yugito had come. Well, she is a Jinchuriki, so maybe she just wanted to talk. He shrugged the thought off for now. Thanks for telling me, Oji-san. Since I'm still kind of sore, I'll visit them today rather than start training. I think that's a good idea, Naruto-kun. Sarutobi agreed. Also, you might want to check out the hot springs on one of your days off. I believe it would prove to be beneficial for you. Naruto blinked for a moment as he sensed some kind of hidden meaning there, but shrugged it off quickly enough. Thanks for the advice, maybe I will pay it a visit. Sarutobi watched the blonde go and shook his head. The things you get into, Naruto-kun. I swear you're giving me more gray hairs than my grandson. Walking into the Higurashi weapons store, Naruto plastered a grin on face. He looked around to see that Kato was manning the shop today, meaning Tenten was probably out training. Ohoyo, Kato-san, he greeted. Kato looked up from the weapon designs his daughter had been making and smiled when he saw Naruto. Ohoyo, Naruto-san, I was wondering when you'd come into my shop. As the boy walked over, he got a better look at him. I guess Tenten wasn't exaggerating when she said you had quite the transformation. You look quite different. Yeah, Naruto rubbed the back of his head. As you can see, I'm in need of some new clothes, my old ones no longer fit. So I noticed, Kato said dryly as Naruto made a clone and had it start grabbing clothes. You know, my daughter was awfully worried about you. She said you injured yourself pretty badly when you fought in the preliminaries. Kato watched the clone grab a bunch of clothes for Naruto to try on. She's pretty mad at you too. Naruto shivered a bit as his clone brought him some clothes. I'll try to find some peace offering to appease her then. Maybe a really expensive kunai set. Kato laughed as Naruto made his way to the changing room. Sighing, the blonde looked at the clothes he had set down and began to try on different kinds. Eventually he decided to go with a pair of black pants with white wraparound bandages, a black long-sleeve shirt, a new pair of black shinobi sandals and a black cloak like the one he had before, except this one had dark red flames lining the bottom. As he walked back out, Naruto spotted something else he felt might be interesting to add to his attire and grabbed it as well. He grabbed several more pairs of clothing before bringing them to the register. Hey Kato-san, I was wondering if you had any fingerless gloves in the color orange. Kato raised an eyebrow at the odd request before nodding. We do have a few. He went into the back of the store before coming out with a box. I had another customer who seemed to have the same fetish for orange as you, so I used to have these custom made for her. Naruto looked at the orange fingerless gloves. They had a metal plate on the back as a guard, however, where most of the plates had a Konoha symbol, these ones didn't. Instead they had the swirl that was shown on the Chunin and Jonin flak jackets. He picked one up before putting it on, clenching and unclenching his fist to get a feel for the gloves. They're perfect, Naruto grinned as he squeezed and flexed his hand. I thought you might like them. Kato smiled at the blonde staring at the gloves in fascination and joy. Your mother loved them after all. He shook the errant thought away as he rang Naruto up. Your total comes to 5,000 yen. Naruto unsealed Gama-chan and took out the necessary money. Thanks for the clothes. If you see Tenten, tell her I'm out of the hospital. Got it. Kato gave Naruto a wave as he left the store. After getting a clone to send his clothes back home, Naruto went to pick up some Ichirakus where he had an interesting encounter with Ayame, who he had caught drooling when she was looking at him. When he finished, the blonde left and wandered around town trying to figure out what to do today, all the while dutifully ignoring the stares sent his way. I can't train today since I'm still kind of sore. I suppose I could visit Tenten, but I kind of want to hold off on her trying to turn me into a human pincushion for as long as I can. Naruto sighed. What to do, what to do? Naruto, why don't you go visit that Yugito girl? Kyubi suggested her vessel. You mean the Kumo Jinchuriki? Naruto asked. I suppose I could, though I have no clue where she is, he sighed. That meant he would have to ask around. He walked into an alley and created a few clones which immediately hinged into random villagers. Already knowing what Naruto wanted, they immediately set off and began searching the area. Hopping onto the roof, the blonde took off towards his apartment where he could rest until his clones told him where Yugito was. While Naruto was out searching for Kumo's Jinchuriki, things were nowhere near as pleasant with one Rock Lee who was being used as target practice by a very angry weapons user. Tenten-san, must you be so angry and unyouthful? Lee squeaked out as he dodged more kunai that the bun-haired girl sent at him. It had been like this since the end to the preliminaries. After Naruto's battle with Gaara, Tenten had been doing one of two things, visiting Naruto at the hospital or using Lee and Neji for target practice. Grr, that jerk. Does he even know how worried I was? Tenten showered the area Lee was in with kunai and shuriken, forcing the bowl-cut boy to dodge and run even more. He keeps taking so many risks. Does he know how much it freaked me out when he lost that arm? Stupid men, and their pig-headedness. Tenten-san, I know you dodges several dozen shuriken or upset with our back flips several times to avoid a dozen kunai most youthful comrade Naruto. But duck's a kitchen sink that Tenten picked up from somewhere. If you keep up this unyouthful act then your flames of youth will diminish. Lee was forced to hide behind a rock as Tenten pulled out two of her scrolls and used her Sushoryu twin rising dragons to launch. Kami only knew how many weapons at Lee. Over on the sidelines Neji watched Lee being used for target practice with a frown. His mind was on the battle Naruto had with Gaara and that strange chakra he had used. That was definitely not normal chakra the blonde had used, he had seen it originate from the blonde's stomach, definitely not where normal chakra comes from. But then, I wonder what it was. Tenten-san, you must cease this action before your flames of youth die out. Neji sighed as he stood up. He was fighting Naruto in the finals first, even if he did not want to admit it, he needed to start training. Naruto walked down the hall of the hotel that he had heard Yugito was staying in, stopping at room 209 where he knocked on the door. He heard some feet shuffling as well as a bang and a muffled curse, causing him to snicker a bit. The door opened and Yugito stepped out wearing nothing but a set of robes, with her hair still wet from having obviously just come out of the shower a few minutes ago. The two stared at each other for a second, and Naruto let his eyes wander up and down her form for a moment. Following the perfect curves and contours of Yugito's body that was lined with a thin waist and toned stomach, yet managed to retain the full form of a woman, which was easily noticeable by her nice-sized and firm hips as well as her C-to-D-cup chest. Naruto was beginning to get the feeling that this body type was something all high-level kunoichi possessed. It was then that he realized what he was doing, making him blush and look away. Is this a bad time? Yugito blinked before she recognized who was in the doorway. She noticed his eyes wandering her body and looked down to see that her robe did little to hide her figure, yet to Naruto's surprise she just smiled. And gestured for him to come in. Not at all, Naruto-kun, why don't you come on in? I was just about to make some tea. Naruto-kun, the spiky-haired blonde asked himself in confusion, didn't I just meet her in the exams? Hell, I don't even think I've spoken with her except that one time during the first test. Shaking the thought off, the spiky-haired blonde walked into the hotel room and took a look around. It was a standard two-bedroom living space, with a kitchen-living room combo and a single door leading to the bedroom. It was fairly bland, but Naruto did not expect it to really have any kinds of home furnishings, since she did not really live there. Why don't you go sit on the couch while I finished getting dressed and make us some tea? Yugito suggested, not at all bothered by the fact that she was in nothing more than a robe. A robe that does so little to hide her figure. Naruto gulped as he responded with, why yeah, okay. He walked further into the apartment and sat down on the leather sofa while Yugito left to get dressed. He closed his eyes for a while and attempted to work on some breathing exercises while he waited, in the hopes that it would help keep away his hormone-induced thoughts. Here you go. Naruto opened his eyes several minutes later to see Yugito wearing a pair of loose-fitting pants and a shirt, holding a cup of hot tea out to him with a small smile. He gave her a smile in return as he accepted the drink. Thank you. He took a sip of the tea, knowing that even if it was poisoned it wouldn't work on him. So how are you feeling? Yugito asked as she sat down on the sofa next to him, surprising Naruto when she sat close enough that their arms were lightly touching. You were pretty injured from your battle with Gaara. Naruto grinned as he set the cup down. It will take far more than something like that to bring me down. He paused for a moment and grimaced, though I really hope I don't lose an arm like that again. He paused when he heard Yugito giggle, I heard you visited me in the hospital. Yugito blushed a tad but nodded, hi, I did. After seeing your battle I wanted to make sure you were alright, especially after you helped my friend Ayako after her battle. Had you not, that Hyuga genin would have probably killed her. There's no need to thank me for something like that, Naruto gave an offhanded shrug. I could never really stand Neji, or his attitude, or those 10-foot metal poles he has shoved up his ass. He grinned when Yugito let out a soft giggle, and seeing him willing to go so far to injure another person in what should be a friendly competition really set me off. I could never stand people who were willing to hold some kind of prejudice against others just because they come from another village, even if it's one that we had been enemies with at one point. Yugito smiled at him. Well, I thank you all the same. You strike me as a very kind person. I guess, Naruto shrugged, he had never really thought himself as kind. He just did what he thought was right. He looked at her for a moment. So was that the only reason you visited me? Because I helped your friend. Yugito shook her head as her smile widened. Not at all. Actually, I wanted to get to know you better, especially after seeing your fight with Gaara. Naruto blinked for a few seconds as he processed what she was saying. You want to get to know me? At her nod he said, I don't think you'll find anything very interesting about me. And I've never been that good with people. That wasn't the first impression I got of you. Yugito gave him an amused grin. Not many people I know are willing to make an enemy out of everyone by threatening to beat them up in the first stage of such an important exam. Nor would they so blatantly insult one of said exam's proctors. He, Naruto scratched the back of his head as he grinned. I suppose that's true. But, Yugito shook her head, you know, despite that overconfident attitude of yours, you're actually very modest. I can tell just from your battle with Gaara that you're fairly strong, especially for your age. Not only that, but you're a very kind person. Not many people would protect a complete stranger from another village like you did just because it's the right thing to do. Plus the fact that you're a Jinchuriki makes you even more interesting. I think it's only natural that I want to get to know you better. Naruto chuckled, I should have figured you'd know I was a Jinchuriki, seeing as you hold the Nibi. He noticed Yugito grin. So, what did you want to know? I really just want to know more about you, Yugito replied with a soft smile. It's never easy growing up as a Jinchuriki. Even in Kumo, where we're now held in reverence as guardians, it has been and in some ways still is hard. Naruto's smile faded a bit as he tilted his head at the blonde woman. That's true. I suppose I can tell you a bit about myself. A mischievous smile came to his face. However, you have to tell me about yourself as well. Yugito returned his grin with a smile. I was planning on it. Naruto had spent nearly the rest of the day with Yugito, just sitting and conversing with her about their lives. Turned out his original assumption was correct. Yugito was 4 years older than he was. Naruto was pleasantly surprised to find out that Yugito could relate to him on some levels. Like him, she had not been trusted very much in Kumo until Kurabi, the other Jinchuriki who also happened to be the current Raikage's younger brother, had managed to earn the village's trust. It was after that, that Kurabi and by proxy her, started to become looked upon as Kumo's protectors. The village had even gone so far as to give Kurabi the title of Guardian of Kumo. It also helped that Yugito held onto the firm belief that loyalty towards your friends and village were the most important things for a ninja to have. She was also supremely confident in her own abilities, not in an arrogant way that most of the genin in exams had been, but in the kind gained from hard work and experience. He also could not help but smile when Yugito told him not to give up on the village, believing that he could change the people's minds and hearts about him the same way Kurabi did. It was rather heartfelt and kind of reminded him of when Haku had told him she believed he could do it. He felt it odd that, even though being with Yugito actually reminded him a bit about his time with Haku, that he did not feel the small flash of pain that normally accompanied the times he would speak with women. Sometimes when he was with Tenten and even Anko, he had felt kind of like he was betraying Haku. He did not act on those feelings, of course. He was trying to move on, but he still could not help but feel that way. That he did not feel like this with Yugito, whom he had just met and only spoke with on one occasion not counting today, was odd, though he chalked it up to the similarities the blonde woman had to him. So you were a prankster when you were younger? Yugito asked, amused but not too surprised to hear that bit of information. Jinchuriki lived fairly lonely existences. It was natural they would find a coping mechanism, lest they become like that Gaara character and go insane. Kurabi had found his in his rapping, and she had found hers in her work and a few other hobbies, so hearing another found them in pranks and goofing off was not a surprise. Naruto chuckled, I wasn't just a prankster Yugito, I was an absolute horror and complete menace too. Society. I remember causing so many problems around the village. Most of the time I would prank the people who would deny me at their stores, or overcharge me for food. Which, to be honest, is like 99% of the stores, shops and restaurants in the village. I would do things like put scents that attracted cockroaches into the restaurants, or dye a clothing store's entire stock hot pink or bright orange. And then when the Anbu came running to find out what the cause was, I would reveal myself and take them on a merry little chase all around the village, running down areas that I had loaded with traps beforehand. I guess it was my way of trying to gain the villagers' attention, because even bad attention is better than none at all. Yugito smiled and placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. You'll get their acknowledgement soon, Naruto-kun. You just have to believe you can do it. She looked at Naruto for a few seconds before speaking again. Kurabi had it pretty rough too. I wasn't even around when it was really bad for him, but I remember him telling me about some of it. How he could not buy in stores without being overpriced, how people would often insult and spit at him as he passed. I even remember hearing about an incident where his best friend tried to kill him. He got through all of that and is now Kumo's most loved individual. The blonde woman gave Naruto a grin, and trust me, if he can do it then I'm positive you can. Thanks, Naruto said. He was not 100% sure if he believed that, but he knew it was something he would never stop striving for, if for no other reason than to spite those who did not believe he could. It's kind odd to hear someone I just met encouraging me, but it really does make me feel better, especially since you can relate. You're most welcome, Yugito replied, her smile never leaving her face. And you don't need to thank me, I'm always willing to help someone as cute as you. Naruto sputtered a bit as he blushed, I'm not cute. Newborn puppies are cute. Kittens are cute. I'm a guy, guys are not cute. Yugito just gave him a feral grin. Oh, don't be like that. It was a compliment. Naruto crossed his arms and gave her a petulant pout. It would be a compliment if I wasn't a dude. Can't you say I'm sexy or devilishly handsome, or perhaps make a comment on my charm and roguish good looks? Anything along those lines would be fine, just not cute. Well, I could, Yugito shrugged as she continued to smile at him, but then I'd be lying. Naruto sniffed as he wiped a fake tear out of his eyes. That's harsh, Yugi-chan, very harsh. Yugito's smile just increased, pleased to hear the new nickname she had received so soon after meeting Naruto, especially since she doubted he even realized he had given her the nickname. She had a feeling that he would bond with her quickly. Naruto, she had realized, was not only a nice person, but was also lonely, and so he would always want to make new friends. It also helped that they were both Jinchuriki and she could understand him better than most people. Naruto looked over at the clock and saw that it was getting late. Looks like I'd better go. He stood up and Yugito followed suit, walking him towards the door. Looking over at the blonde woman, Naruto gave her a smile. You know, I had pretty good time tonight. Likewise, Yugito smiled softly at him. If you would like, perhaps when we have a break from our respective training we can do something a little more active. Naruto blushed as his mind immediately went down the gutter and held his nose to keep from passing out. Yugito noticed this and laughed. I didn't mean it like that. Really, Naruto-kun, you're such a pervert. I'm not a pervert, Naruto defended. I just have a healthy amount of admiration for the female figure. He sighed as he could tell she was not buying it. I blame Anko. In a small dango stand, Anko sneezed all over her dango, and began to swear and curse, promising to castrate whoever made her sneeze on her precious dango. All of the men who were near the women began to back away in fear as they held onto their junk. Naruto shivered as he felt the desire to run and hide in a corner somewhere. Anko. Wasn't that the proctor of the second stage for the Chunin exams? Yugito placed a face to the name. You did seem awfully close to her. But I don't see how you can blame being a pervert on her. You don't know her like I do, Naruto shuddered. Besides, you should have figured out from her general lack of clothing that she's rather open about her sexuality. I remember she was the one who gave me the birds and the bees talk. Yugito raised an eyebrow as Naruto began shivering uncontrollably. Was it really that bad? You ever hear of the Ika Ika series? Asked Naruto, getting a nod from Yugito. I remember when I mentioned that I didn't know about sex or reproduction, she had taken it upon herself to teach me. Really all she did was kidnap me in the middle of the night, tie me to a chair, and then she read the first 3 books from the Ika series as well as forced me to look at the picture illustrations. I haven't been able to look at women the same since. Not entirely sure what to say to Naruto. Tragic experience. Yugito felt it would be wiser to simply avoid the subject in the future. So you were saying something about spending some time together this month? Naruto queried, deciding he had unintentionally gave away too much information about his life issues with women. Yugito nodded as she switched mental gears due to the change in topic. I usually take Sundays off from any training I do so that I can rest my body. I was wondering if you would like to spend some time with me this Sunday. You could meet me here sometime during the afternoon, or perhaps I could meet you at your place. That sounds fun actually, Naruto said, thinking for a minute. I'll meet you here around 12 o'clock. Is that alright? Yes, that's perfect, Yugito smiled at him. Naruto could not help but return her smile. So what are we gonna do? Yugito just gave him a wink. That is a secret. Naruto pouted for a moment, making Yugito giggle before relenting as he knew if she was anything like the other women in his life he would never get it out of her. Alright. See ya Yugi-chan, Naruto waved to her as he started walking down the hall. Yugito smiled one last time before she closed the door. See kitten, I told he was quite the catch. Yes well, even you have to be right once in a blue moon. Yugito could almost feel Nibi pouting, though the pout on its face would probably be more terrifying than anything. Now that's not very nice. When have I ever steered you wrong before? How about that time you told me Jashiro was a nice catch? Hey, I was just saying he was attractive. What about the time you wanted me to be all over Taro? I can't always know when someone's nothing more than a lecher. Okay then, what about the time you told me Kiza would be a nice match for me? How was I supposed to know he had crabs? Yugito rolled her eyes. Whatever, I believe I've made my point, Your Honor, I rest my case. But that's not fair kitten, you can't blame me for everything. Single quote ellipsis single quote. Kitten, are you listening to me? Once he had left the apartment complex, Naruto walked back home with a perplexed look on his face. Did she just ask me out on a date? I don't think I've really been doing anything differently than what I used to do. In fact, now that I think about it, maybe even more obnoxious than I was before. Naruto huffed in frustration, ignoring the looks he received. I just don't get it. It was the oddest thing to him. Before when he was at the academy he could never have gotten a date with anyone. Now he had just had an extremely hot older blonde ask him out this Sunday. Really it was the most perplexing thing. Of course, he had only ever asked Sakura out, so maybe that had something to do with it. Though he was not sure any of the other girls would have gone out with him either, they had all been completely stuck on Sasuke even though he had never shown any interest in them. Maybe it was just the girls in Konoha who he could not get. After all he and Haku had gotten together pretty fast. He winced a moment as he thought of Haku, and then this date he was going to be going on Sunday. For a brief moment he felt like he was betraying her. However he ruthlessly squashed the feeling before it could take hold. He knew for a fact that she would beat the crap out of him if he let her death get the best of him, so he would do his best move on but never forget. And perhaps going on a date with Yugito would actually help with that. After all she was nice, understood where he was coming from and she extremely attractive, easily drool-worthy in his humble opinion. You just haven't noticed how much you've changed Naruto, Kyuubi commented from within his mind as she brushed her tails. She saw the memory and the brief flash of pain from his memory and in the interest of keeping her vessel from becoming weak, felt it best if she steer his thoughts away from where they had been going. Your personality might not have shifted too much from who you were originally, but you're a lot more mature now than you had been. You also don't go screaming about ramen and Hokage every chance you get, and can have a serious discussion when needed. Kyuubi paused for a second before adding another comment almost as an afterthought. It also helps that you've become quite fetching. Naruto paused in his thoughts as he heard Kyuubi, and had to resist laughing when he heard the word she had used. Did you just say fetching? Seriously. What kind ass backwards word is that? Oh shut up. Kyuubi hmphed, blushing a bit as she used a word she had not heard in nearly 1,000 years. A part of her could not believe she had actually used a word that had not been used in such a way in so long, so I sometimes talk old school. You mean really old school? I don't think I've ever heard someone say someone else's, fetching. And considering that I've had to spend years listening to the ramblings of the Uchiha Sasuke fan club go on about how great the Tem is all throughout the academy, that's quite the accomplishment. Naruto chuckled a bit. It's also kind of interesting since if didn't know any better, I would say you just told me I'm handsome, or something like that. Kyuubi took a long moment to register the blonde's words, and when she did she felt pale as she realized she had just complimented him. However, just because she may have said something like that does not mean he could get away with mentioning it. Naruto, am I going to have to cut off the circulation to your male anatomy? Naruto paled. No, Kyuubi, sorry. I was just joking. He still did not know if she could do that, but considering she lived inside of him, sort of, he did not want to take the chance that it was real. Remember, think before you speak, Naruto, Kyuubi admonished in a somewhat ominous tone. Naruto's sweat dropped. Right, the blonde walked up the stairs to his apartment building and over to his room number. However, when he found his door he also found a surprise waiting for him. Ten-chan, Naruto questioned as he saw Tenten standing on his doorway, hands on her hips, and what he had come to recognize as a bad look for any female to have, especially when it's directed at you. Ah, is there a problem, Ten-chan? Is there a problem? Tenten asked with a sweet smile that screamed danger. Oh no, there's no problem, only that you got your arm cut off and nearly killed. She finished in a yell as she stalked towards him. Naruto immediately began to back up in fear. Damn it, Naruto. Do you know how incredibly reckless that fight of yours was? I nearly had a heart attack from half the shit you pulled. Getting yourself smacked around like that. Not stopping the fight after your whole arm is ripped off. If you ever, and I mean ever, do something like that again, I will nail you to a wall and shove a rusty kunai so far up your ass you won't be able to sit for a week. By this point Naruto was cowering from the bun-haired girl who seemed to have fire surrounding her, and several demonic figures standing behind her, glowering at him. Ten-chan, I couldn't just back down from a fight. So you battle until you get your arm ripped off. Tenten's eyes twitched. Do you know how stupid that sounds? You nearly died. Yeah, but I didn't, Naruto defended himself. Look, I know you were worried about me, and I am sorry for worrying you. But you can't just tell me to quit when shit hits the fan. I'm not the kind of person to do that. I know that, but, Tenten bit her lower lip, I can't help but worry about you, Naruto-kun. You were so reckless back there. The next time you might not be as lucky and just lose an arm, you could die. Wow, you're calling losing an arm lucky? Naruto grinned as he tried to lighten the situation. It dropped a second later when he saw that she looked ready to actually follow through with her threat. I doubt losing an arm could be considered lucky. I don't think anyone else would have been able to survive after something like that, at least not with their shinobi career still intact. That's definitely true. Tenten snorted, before looking at him curiously. Just how did you regrow your arm anyway? Naruto wagged a finger back and forth chidingly. That's a trade secret, my dear. Can't have other shinobi taking my special techniques now, can I? Not that they'd be able to even if they knew how it was done. Kyuubi piped up, and it's my technique, not yours. Yeah, but she doesn't know about you. You can't expect me to just come out and say, well, you see, it's all because I have the most powerful demon sealed in my gut, you know, the one who nearly destroyed Konoha. But don't worry, she's actually not half bad. In fact, you might like her, can you? Kyuubi hmphed, well, I suppose you do have a valid point. Of course I do. Then he remembered that Kyuubi was trying to get along with him and added, but don't worry, I know just how much you do for me, and you know I appreciate it. Naruto felt an odd warmth originating from his seal. You're such a charmer, Naruto-kun. The odd thing about her statement was she was actually being somewhat honest, even if she spoke in the same flirty way she had used to enthrall other males. It was odd because they were so different from any thoughts she held previously about the blonde or anyone else, and it was still taking some time for her to understand and come to terms with the changes she was feeling. Feeling the desire to get the last word in, Naruto said, I aim to please. Tenten pouted at not being told how he could grow an arm back like it was nothing. She was sure that not even Tsunade knew how to do that. Though it did not seem like a medical jutsu. She shook her head. Whatever, just promise me you'll be more careful. Naruto grinned. I'll do my best. She narrowed her eyes at him and he immediately sought to placate her. Look, I can't make that promise, sometimes risks have to be taken to accomplish goals or complete missions. However, I promise to do my best not to take too many risks. I suppose that's all I can hope for, Tenten sighed. Sorry, Naruto apologized, not liking seeing one of his precious people hurt, but knowing it was better than making a promise he could not keep. I know it's not what you wanted, he gave her a smile. Though I am grateful to know that you care about me so much. Tenten blushed. Oh, of course I care about you, Baka. If I didn't, who would? Of course, Naruto chuckled. He stopped and looked at her. Is there anything else you wanted to talk to me about? You know, besides chewing my ass out for being a danger to myself and an in general ass for not taking the feelings of you and others into consideration. Tenten glared at him for chewing out comment before shaking her head. No, that's all I wanted to talk to you about. Naruto frowned for a moment before smiling. Okay then, it's getting pretty late, so I'll see you later, K-10-chan. Okay. Tenten watched as Naruto unlocked the door to his apartment and bit her lip. Wait. Naruto turned around to see Tenten staring at him, her face extremely red. Yes. Are you okay, Ten-chan? Your face is really red. Tenten eeped, as Naruto leaned in to look at her face, coming so close their noses were almost touching. I'm fine, she backed away a bit. If you say so, Naruto shrugged after looking at her for a few moments, so you had something else you wanted to say. Well, I was just wondering if, Naruto frowned as Tenten began to stutter. He had never seen her look so unsure of herself before. Are you sure you're okay? You seem really out of it, Naruto said as he looked at her with concern. Tenten couldn't but squirm a bit under Naruto's gaze. Yes, I'm fine. I just wanted to ask you something. Oh, well, ask away. Naruto gave the bun-haired girl a smile. You know you can always talk to me about stuff. So what did you want to ask me? I wanted to ask, Tenten sighed as she worked up her courage. She had never done what she was about to do before, so it was rather difficult. It also didn't help that she had first thought she would be asking Neji to do this with her, not someone she had met 6 months ago. Taking a deep breath, she plunged on. I wanted to ask if you wanted to go out to dinner with me. Dinner? As in a date? Asked Naruto, blinking a few times as he tried to understand what she was saying. Oh, of course not. I mean, it doesn't have to be. Tenten hurried to say, I mean it can just be a dinner between two friends. I mean dating is Tenten, Naruto interrupted the girl. Seriously, how did this happen? This is like 2 dates in one night. Am I really that much more desirable now than I was in the academy? He frowned for a moment as he thought about what he should do. It's not that he didn't want to go on a date with her, but there were a few things that prevented him from outright accepting. The first excuse was Haku, of course, but he could keep thoughts of her from interfering with his daily life and knew if it was just that he would not have a problem. No, the main problem was that he was unsure if any of the restaurants would let him eat at their establishment. However, as he looked at her worried face, he knew that he would not be able to turn her down. I would be more than happy to take you out to dinner, he gave her a soft smile. Really? Tenten's relief became obvious when she suddenly gave him a brilliant smile and all the tension seemed to melt away. Okay then, does this Friday sound good to you? Naruto thought for a moment. It wouldn't really cut into his training since by that point he would really just meditate while his clones dispersed. He gave her a smile. Friday would work perfectly. What time would you like me to pick you up? And do you have a specific place you would like to go? 7 o'clock is a good time for me, that way I can get washed up after my training. I know this small-time restaurant that just opened up a little over a month ago that I wanted to check out. Well, alright then. It's a date. Naruto gave her a grin so large his eyes squinted, making him look like a fox. Okay, a date, Tenten smiled, before her eyes widened. Oh number. I left the shop unmanned. Oh, 2-san's gonna kill me. I'll see you later, Naruto-kun. Naruto watched as the bunhai-red girl ran off. He shook his head a few times before he smiled. Things are definitely getting interesting around here. 2 dates in one day, what the fuck? Entering his house, Naruto got ready for bed, brushing his teeth, getting out of the hospital clothes before finally passing out on his bed. knowing he would need all the rest he could get for the coming month. Omake. The birds and the bees with Anko. Anko snickered as she picked the lock for Naruto's apartment, grinning in satisfaction when she heard it click open. Using the stealth skills only a kunoichi at her level had, she snuck into the blonde's bedroom. Anko made her way over to the bed, where Naruto was sleeping, mumbling about swimming in a pool of ramen. The snake mistress shook her head. This kid had the oddest dreams. She leaned down to pick him up, however Naruto must have heard her, because his eyes suddenly opened. What the hell? He couldn't finish his sentence since Anko hit him in the back of the neck, knocking him unconscious. Grinning like a mad woman, she hefted him over her shoulder and left the apartment. Naruto awoke with a slight groan. Smacking his lips, he lifted his arms over his head to stretch the odd soreness out of his neck. Or at least he tried to. When he felt his arms being strained against something, he snapped his eyes open. Naruto looked down and saw that he was tied to a chair. No wonder I've got this friggin' creak in my neck. He looked around and noticed the unfamiliar room. How the hell did I get here? His wonderings were cut off when the door to his left opened. Good morning, Gaki. Anko greeted with a cheerful smile as she walked in, munching on some dango with one hand while holding a small orange book in the other. Anko ne-chan. Naruto questioned, what the hell? You're the one who tied me up. Oh, don't be like that, Gaki. Anko pouted a bit. I'm only doing this to help you. How does tying me up help me? Naruto shouted as he struggled and tried to escape. Anko grinned as she pulled up a chair and sat next to him. Well, I figured I would give you a special lesson today, and I don't want you running away from me. Naruto stopped and looked at her wearily. Anything that she called special was usually something to be avoided at all costs. It was simply safer that way, less painful too. A special lesson. That's right. The Tokubetsu Jonin chirped. Today you're going to learn about the birds and the bees, Anko style. Birds. Bees. Naruto tilted his head to the side with a frown. Why the hell would I want to learn about a couple of animals? Anko groaned. You really are clueless, Gaki. I mean sex. Sex. Naruto squeaked, his face taking on the hue of a tomato. Yup. Sex. I even brought a special book to help me. Well, several, but we'll be going through this one first. Anko opened the book, which Naruto now recognized as the perverted literature that Kakashi and Sarutobi read. He immediately began to struggle, trying to free himself from his bonds. Anko noticed this and grinned as she stuffed his mouth with a sock so he could not speak, and then turned to her favorite scene. Oh Nimiko, we can't do this. It's forbidden, cried Kunisha. I know it's forbidden, Kunisha-chan, but that just makes me want you even more. Nimiko said as he pressed her against the wall. Kunisha tried to wiggle out of his grasp, but stopped when one of her breasts was snuggled firmly between Nimiko's hands as he began to knead her flesh. Soon her restraints crashed down and she began to moan as. For the next 10 hours, Naruto was subject to all of Anko's favorite sex scenes in the Ika novels, irrevocably changing and corrupting Naruto's perspective on women. It would be a month before he could look Anko in the eyes after that. Chapter 21, Problems in Paradise. The next morning found Naruto up bright and early as he decided now was the time to start his training. Rather than going to his usual training ground 43, he had decided to head into the Forest of Death so that the chances of people actually seeing his jutsu were nil. Using one of the many clearings he knew of that had a low probability of the forest's creatures trying to kill him, Naruto set up a basic genjutsu fuinjutsu around the area, as well as a security seal to alert him on the off chance that someone did actually enter his sanctuary. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. There was a puff of smoke, and when it cleared, Naruto found himself with not his standard 300 clones, but instead 500 clones. He scratched the back of his head in confusion. What the hell? I didn't use enough chakra to make 500 clones. So why did you forget, Naruto? Kyuubi spoke up from within the seal. Naruto scrunched up his face in confusion as the vixen's voice entered his mind. What do you mean, Kyuubi? Am I forgetting something? Kyuubi resisted the urge to sigh. You're a Hanyu now. That means you are not using chakra but Yuki, or at least a variant of Yuki. Due to its potency, you do not need as much to get the same effect from one of your jutsu. That's right. You said something about that, hehe, I guess I forgot. Within the seal, Kyuubi rolled her eyes, obviously. Naruto frowned as he looked at the extra Kage Bunshin. So what do I do now? I mean, I don't need the extra 200 clones. Didn't Hatake give you a scroll? Kyuubi asked. It may have something your clones can do in it. Naruto blinked. Oh right, he reached into his pouch where he had put the scroll yesterday. He looked at it for a moment before unrolling it and reading its contents. Naruto. I made this for Hokage-sama to give to you when you woke up. First off, I would like to tell you how proud I am of you for beating an opponent as fearsome as Gaara. Though I would recommend you be less reckless next time, it would save some of us a heart attack. That being said, good job. It was here that both Naruto and Kyuubi sweat dropped as they saw a chibi drawing of Kakashi giving them an eye smile and holding up one of his hands in the peace sign. Shaking his head, Naruto continued to read. Now I have started training Sasuke for this month because in all honesty I feel he needs it more than you do. However, I don't want you to be left out or think that I have forgotten about you. Why I have written down several jutsu on this scroll for you to learn. Jutsu that you won't be able to get anywhere in Konoha due to the fact that I copied many of them during the war. I know that your elemental affinity is for wind, however that does not mean you can't learn jutsu from other elements, it will just take more chakra. There are 4 jutsu for each element, as well as a few non-elemental jutsu that I feel will prove useful to you. Good luck with your training and I hope to see how you do in the finals. Kakashi. On the bottom of the scroll Naruto found a list of 24 different jutsu ranging from E rank to B rank, 4 from each element, each giving an E, D, C and B ranked jutsu, and then 4 non-elemental jutsu of the same ranking. Well, at least he didn't leave me high and dry. Kyuubi. Naruto chuckled a bit. He knew the real reason Kakashi had to train Sasuke. Having finished his reading on shinobi politics several months ago, he knew that the council would be on his sensei's back to train the Uchiha heir. And as Konoha's demon brat, they would raise hell if Kakashi took time to train him. It's better than nothing, Kyuubi replied. She did not much care for jutsu, but as they were what humans used they could be useful to Naruto. Well, at least now I know what to have my extra clones do. Naruto looked up at his clones and began to give orders. Alright guys, I want 300 of you to separate and do our original routine. The rest of you are going to grab this scroll and work on some jutsu. I want you to choose one, and then work on it with 15 clones at a time until they dispel. Rotate like that every time a group dispels or learns the jutsu. Start from D rank and work your way up. Asu. The clones shouted as they went off to do their thing. With the clones off to do their training, Naruto decided to speak with Kyuubi about his own training. Okay, so what are you going to be teaching me, Kyuubi? Teach you? Kyuubi asked, and though Naruto could not see it, he could imagine the sly smirk on her face. Whoever said I would teach you? Kyuubi, Naruto warned as he really did not want to deal with her when she was like this. Alright fine, Kyuubi sighed. A part of her was angry that he wasn't letting her play. Before the chain of events that led her to being sealed inside of a human vessel, she had always played with words when using her charms and looks to woo men, as it were, though she had figured that Naruto may not appreciate her natural tendencies for the moment, so she decided to let it go. The first thing I am going to teach you is the first technique I ever made. It's called a Yuki whip. Essentially it's a whip made of Yuki that you use to slash or tie up objects. Depending on how good you get, the power behind the attack can be low-powered enough to leave only light bruises, or be so strong that it can cut through even the toughest metals. And this is your first technique? Naruto asked incredulously. Remind me to never get on your bad side. Kyuubi smirked. I don't think it would work. You seem to get on my bad side no matter what I say. Ouch, Naruto winced. That was harsh, though the same can be said for you. Touché. Alright, so this technique, how does it work? Asked Naruto, wanting to get started. Right, well, the key to using this technique is rather simple. All you need to do is channel Yuki to one of your fingers and then will your energy to extend outward. The length of the whip can vary depending on how long you want it and how much Yuki you put in it. The only difficulty that you may have is maintaining the shape. The shape of the whip needs to be perfectly smooth and of the same thickness everywhere, which will also be the same radius as your finger, yet it must also be completely flexible so that it's pliant enough to use like one would a normal whip. Now I want you to begin. Use the trees to practice on. Got it, Kyuubi. Naruto channeled some of his Yuki into his left pointer finger, watching in fascination as the energy surrounded his finger. He had not noticed it before, but it due to his energy now being a perfect blend of chakra and yuki, the color of it had gone from a deep blue to a royal purple. He shook his head and refocused his thoughts on the forming a whip. Several tendrils appeared and coalesced together around his finger before extending out to form a whip, which began to pull at Naruto's feet. The spiky-haired blonde lashed out at one of the trees, but was disappointed when it fizzled out before it hit. Frowning, he tried again, several tries later, and he was no closer to getting the technique to work. What the hell? Why didn't it work? Within the seal, Kyuubi gave a thoughtful frown as she resisted the urge to laugh at Naruto and instead watched him work on the technique. It seems you don't have enough control over your yuki to form the whip like this. Try using your index and pointer finger. Naruto nodded and followed Kyuubi's advice. The purple energy formed again and the tendrils reformed before taking the shape of a whip. It was noticeably thicker this time, and when Naruto lashed out at the tree it left a small gash across the surface. Not bad for a first-timer, especially since you've only just recently switched from using chakra to yuki, Kyuubi complimented as she observed the damage done through Naruto's eyes. She paused for a moment as she thought of what to say next. Should she tell him what he did wrong? Or should she should just have him move on to another exercise since he could at least form the whip. Damn it. This is harder than I thought, Kyuubi complained as she tried to think of how she should talk to the blonde. Truth was, she was still weary of his power. It was not as strong as hers, of course. But it had still been very strong, and with this new mutation on the seal that held her, she was limited in what she could actually do. Were it to come down to a fight now, Kyuubi was not sure if she would win. Kyuubi, Naruto called as he waited for the redhead to elaborate. Kyuubi snapped out of her thoughts before realizing that Naruto was calling her. Oh, sorry, I was distracted by something. Naruto frowned but decided not to question Kyuubi for the moment. It's alright, so do you have any advice for me? Not at the moment, no, it will just take practice to master. Kyuubi paused as she attempted to gather her thoughts. I think that's fine for the moment, Naruto. I just wanted you to get an idea of the technique for now. I want you to continue your physical training instead, and come back to this later. Naruto nodded and looked down at his weights. Since he no longer had to constantly have them on to keep in shape, he had turned them off. Deciding on a weight, Naruto began channeling yuki through them. He gave a surprised yelp as his entire body crashed into the ground, creating a crater where he impacted. What the hell? For several seconds he tried to get back up only to find it impossible. Fuck, I forgot I don't need as much yuki as I do chakra. He heard a giggle in his mind and growled a bit while blushing from embarrassment. He looked at his left arm and groaned. 600 pounds. Damn it. No wonder these are so heavy. Naruto struggled to move one of his hands so he could drop the weights and restart. It took several minutes, but he was eventually able to get the weights to a good setting of 180 pounds. For his arms, 200 pounds. For his legs. Nodding his satisfaction, he looked at his resistance training seals. Those had not been removed since he wanted to keep his true speed hidden unless needed. Right now they were still at level 4. Since his body had already adapted thanks to his transformation, he decided to change the seal to level 5. When he was less experienced, he probably would have changed it several settings higher so that he could faster. But having learned that everything was like a stepping stone when training, Naruto made sure to master each level with and without the seal on, that way he could function without tunnel vision when he was no longer using it. Satisfied with the amount of difficulty he had, Naruto began his workout. For the rest of the week, this was how Naruto's routine went. Having his clone work on their usual routines of chakra control, wind manipulation, which had become more of keeping himself in form since he had no more exercises he could do right now. Taijutsu and Fuinjutsu, which had now become his clones brainstorming and attempting to make their own seals to use. He had several projects which were starting to bear fruit, and it was his hope he would be able to put them to use in combat. His other 200 clones continued working on the jutsu list he had. It was his hope that he would be able to get down at least a fourth of the jutsu in it before the month ended. Of course, it was much harder to learn most of them because he did not have an affinity for some of them, but with the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu he was able to make steady progress. Other than that, he continued his physical exercises and worked on the chakra whip himself. He could have made clones, of course, but for some reason he felt that Kyuubi's techniques should be learned by him and not a clone. Maybe it was something to do with his pride. He still managed to make good progress and had begun working on changing the density and power behind the whip. He continued doing all of this until Friday, when he had his date with Tenten. Naruto entered the Higurashi weapons store to pick up Tenten for their date. He had decided to wear civilian clothes for the occasion, which consisted of khaki-colored pants, a white button-up shirt with the Konoha insignia on the back, and a pair of black shoes. Even his headband was at home, letting his spiky hair hang freely to fall into his eyes. "Naruto-san," Kato said as he spotted the blonde shinobi. "I assume you're here to pick up Tenten for her date." Naruto gulped when he sensed the warning tone in Kato's voice. "Yes sir." Kato nodded. "Tenten, get down, your date's here." "Dad." The embarrassed shout came from upstairs. Chuckling a bit, Kato looked back at Naruto before his expression turned serious. "Before you go on this date with my daughter, I have a word of advice for you. Treat her right, or I'll give a first-hand personal demonstration on how well my weapons work." Naruto paled a bit at the implied threat. He had of course been threatened before, but something about the tone in Kato's voice said he would really go through with it, and probably enjoy it too. "You don't need to worry, Kato-san. I would never do anything bad to Ten-chan, or let anything bad happen to her," Naruto replied, mustering up his courage, which seemed to have fled during Kato's threat. "That's good to hear." Kato laughed, causing Naruto to blink as the tension disappeared. "I rather like you, much more than that Neji boy she seemed so obsessed with before. So it would have been a shame to kill you." Not sure whether Kato was being honest with that last comment or not, Naruto decided it would be best to just nod and put it in the "scares the shit out of me" category of his brain. A few minutes later Tenten came down the stairs. "Sorry for taking so long, Naruto-kun," she said as she came the rest of the way down the stairs and looked at Naruto. She blushed a bit. "You look really nice. I feel kind of underdressed with what you're wearing." "Thanks," Naruto grinned as he looked down at his clothes, then back up at Tenten's. She wasn't wearing much different, the only difference being her shirt, which was still a Chinese-style shirt, but green with a gold dragon coiled around the left side and a little longer, going down to her mid-thigh. "Doesn't matter, you look beautiful the way you are." Tenten's blush deepened a bit, but a smile came onto her face as she looked away bashfully, not used to someone actually complimenting her on her looks. Naruto chuckled. This was one of the few times he was somewhat grateful for the Ika books and Anko's continuous teasing in her reading of said books to him. He held out his arm and smiled. "Shall we go?" Tenten smiled as she encircled his arm with both of her own. "I'll see you later, Dad," Tenten called as she and Naruto left. "Make sure you're back by 10 o'clock. Kato yelled after them. He watched the door closed before sighing in worry. "Great, first she wants to be a ninja and now she wants to date. At this rate I'll probably die of a heart attack sometime in the next few years." As the pair walked down the village, Naruto made sure to engage Tenten in as much conversation as possible. Reason being, he did not want the bun-haired girl to notice all of the hostile looks he was currently getting. When he had first gotten back from the preliminaries, he had gotten looks of curiosity and even a few that reminded him of the kinds he got from the girls back in Nami no Kuni. However, that had only lasted for a few days until people realized who he was, then it was right back to glaring. And because he did not want to ruin Tenten's date with any negative connotations, and that she had not been with him in public, he made sure to keep her attention away from the civilian populace. They entered the small restaurant and Tenten led Naruto over to one of the booths that lined the walls. Picking up a menu, Naruto waited nervously for someone to take their order. Not because this could technically be considered a first date, no, he had been pretty much desensitized to that thanks to a mixture of Anko and his time spent with Haku and Nami. He was sure that if it were just that, he would not be nervous at all. What made him worry was the fact that he was not entirely sure the people here would sell him anything. He had only ever been able to eat at Ichiraku's, hence the reason it and by proxy, ramen, had become his all-time favorite food, aside from the fact that he loved the delectable noodles. Naruto turned his head when he noticed a waitress come over to their table. He also noticed when she stiffened and turned a glare upon seeing him. "Can I take your order, miss?" the waitress asked in a stiff voice. Tenten frowned as she heard the odd inflection in the woman's tone, but could not ascertain as to what it could be for. "Yes, I would like udon with chicken and a side of vegetables, please." The woman nodded. "Your order will be right up." She very swiftly turned around and began to walk away. However, Tenten immediately noticed a problem. Excuse me, but you didn't get my friend's order. The woman stopped for all but a moment before continuing on. Hey! Tenten shouted as she stood up, and Naruto noticed she was quickly gathering attention to them. Are you listening to me? No, I heard you. The woman said, turning around. However, we don't serve his kind here. She hissed as she pointed at Naruto, spitting out the word his like it was some kind of vile toxin. Naruto winced as he noticed the attention that had now been turned onto him, which all became glares as soon as they realized who he was. Tenten had not yet noticed this, however, as she glared at the woman. What do you mean his kind? Do you have some kind of problem with him? Tenten, Naruto said in a low voice, hoping to get her to stop drawing attention to them. However, Tenten was not listening at the moment, being far too incensed that some bitch was being an ass to her friend, because if you do have a problem then all. Tenten, Naruto said a little firmer. As he grabbed her hand. Said girl looked down at him to see him shake his head. There's no need to cause a scene. Just let them give you your food and we can go somewhere else. Tenten frowned as she looked at him, but Naruto-ku. Tenten please, Naruto said, his eyes no longer showing the confident borderline cocky person he had become. Right now they were pleading, please don't get worked up about this over me, I'm used to this. That last statement, said in such desperation, made Tenten grit her teeth. No, if they're not going to treat you, then I don't want to waste my money with this establishment. She reversed their grips as she was no grabbing his hand and pulled the blonde up. Come on, we're leaving. She did not leave any room for argument as she handily dragged Naruto away, slamming the door open on her way out. The nerve of those people. Tenten huffed as she pulled the blonde along. I can't believe they would so blatantly refuse a customer. What kind of idiots are they? Naruto did not speak up until Tenten had finished her rant. I'm sorry, Ten-chan. Tenten looked at him with an odd expression in her eyes. Why would you be sorry? None of this is your fault. Oh, it is, you just don't know it. Naruto did not voice this out loud and instead asked, maybe we should just head home. You want to cancel our date? Tenten asked in surprise. Nothing's been ruined, we just have to go to another establishment. Naruto winced. No, it wouldn't matter if we went to another establishment. They would do the same thing, some might not even let me in. What do you mean? Asked Tenten, confused. I mean it's like this everywhere I go, Naruto spoke, keeping his head down so that his hair covered his eyes. Haven't you ever wondered why the only place I ever took you was Ichiraku's? Or why I always meet you there instead of pick you up? Or why whenever we hung out after our spars I would just find a spot in the training field to sit at? Tenten frowned. Truthfully, she had never thought of that. In fact, she had not even noticed. But now that he had brought it up, it was easy to see he did do all those things. As she began to replay all the times she had spent together with the blonde, she began to notice another thing. The people around Naruto were giving them a wide berth. She cast a discreet glance towards one of the people who were passing and frowned at seeing them glaring at Naruto. Because her dad had never hated the blonde, she had never been subject to the prejudice that had been raised against him. Oh, she had noticed that he was not well liked in the academy. No matter what grade you were in, everyone had heard of the prankster king from hell, Uzumaki Naruto. But she had always thought that the whispered mutterings when academy instructors would talk about him or when the civilians would occasionally talk about him were for a prank he would pull. Naruto had not done any pranks since he graduated. And yet the people here were glaring at him, not just glaring at him, but glaring at him with enough hate that it made her shiver, and it wasn't even being directed at her. She looked over at Naruto, who had not moved since he had spoken. He looked extremely vulnerable right now. She wanted to ask him why he was hated but decided a more private place would be better suited for a talk like this. Grabbing his hand again, she pulled him along until they were well enough from the more crowded streets. Sighing, she stopped and turned around to face Naruto again. Naruto, what was all that about? She asked, trying to get a look at his eyes. Those people, why were they so? She wasn't even sure what to call it. Hateful, vengeful. The emotion was too intense to really come up with an appropriate word. I'm sorry. Naruto whispered, I can't tell you. Why not? Tenten asked with a frown. I'm your friend, aren't I? Don't I deserve to know these things about you? Naruto could not hold in the wince. Please don't make me tell you. So you're not going to tell me? Do you not trust me? No. Naruto's eyes widened as he looked at her. Of course I trust you. Then why won't you tell me? Tenten shouted, frustrated with how the blonde was acting. Because Naruto shook his head and began again. There are things about me that you simply don't know, things that will change your opinion about me if you do know. He saw her open her mouth but forestalled her with a hand. Even if you accept what I say, it would still change your opinion. It may be a positive influence, but it may also be a negative influence. But no matter what happens, it will change what you think and feel about me. I haven't told you this, but you were the very first friend my age that I made and I don't want to lose that friendship. Tenten's eyes widened at the new knowledge. She had not realized that. Naruto seemed like such a likable person. Sure, he was kind of loud and tended to say more than he should, but he had toned it down since she had first met him when he wore that hideous orange jumpsuit into the store. To hear that he had no friends until her was both surprising and sad. I still think you should let me know, she said at last. Naruto sighed. I can't, not yet. She was about to protest but stilled her mouth when he said yet. I promise I'll tell you after the Chunin exams. I know it won't make that much difference but this isn't something I can just come out and tell someone. Why? Because it's something I only just found out about 6 months ago, Naruto replied. I'm still kind of trying to deal with this knowledge myself. It also happens to be an S-class village secret that will get anyone but me executed if they even talk about it. Tenten had not thought she could be any more surprised than she had been before, but this new one threw her for a loop. So before I tell you, I want you to think about whether you feel it's really worth knowing. This will also give me the chance to gather up my courage, so to speak. Naruto looked down at his feet. I know it might not seem like it makes a difference, but I doubt a month will change my desire to know, Tenten said, interrupting the blonde with a shake of her head. When Naruto looked back up at her she smiled, but if it will make you feel better, I'll wait. Naruto smiled, thank you, and I'm sorry for ruining our date. Who said our date is ruined? Tenten asked with a grin, grabbing his arm again and walking towards a specific part of town. We may not be able to go to some restaurant, but I know this great ramen stand we can go to. Naruto chuckled a bit as he felt relief that Tenten was willing to wait for him, and still wanted to go on this date despite the terrible start they had with it. That decided they had gone out to Ichiraku's before Naruto had escorted Tenten back home. He was supremely grateful that Tenten's dad was somewhere in the back of the store when he and Tenten arrived, because he was sure the man would castrate him if he saw Tenten giving him a kiss, even if it was on the cheek. If for no other reason than that, Naruto had decided that the date was a success. And so many people got to watch in shock and a small amount of fear as Naruto danced back to his house, laughing like a madman. For the Saturday Naruto had continued his training until Sunday, the day he normally let his body rest and the day he had a date with Yugito. Learning what he could and working on his physical fitness and jutsu. There was only one issue that had come up and that was when the blonde had noticed Kyuubi acting distant, well more distant than usual. Flashback. Saturday. Naruto grinned in satisfaction as he watched the tree fall to the forest floor as it was sliced all the way through. It was one of the small trees that seemed to line the bottom of the forest, but it was still a decent size. Yes, I think I got this technique down, Kyuubi. It's too bad I can't test it on steel, but I really don't know where I would get some for such a random purpose. So what's next? He waited a few seconds but frowned when Kyuubi didn't answer him. Kyuubi. Naruto called her name several more times and when none of it got her to answer decided to travel into the seal. Naruto found himself standing outside of Kyuubi's small hut when he entered his mind. He walked up to the door and knocked on it a few times. When he still got no answer he knocked again, and frowned when he still got no answer. Despite his slight fear of getting on the redhead's bad side he opened the door and walked in. He spotted Kyuubi as soon as he entered. She was lying on her large velvety bed, facing away from him. He knew she already knew he was here and so didn't bother masking his presence as he walked up to the bed. He crawled onto the bed and sat next to the vixen's slowly breathing form. Kyuubi, I know you're awake. Naruto said, watching her for any movement. What's eating you? Normally you would have at the very least insulted me by now. Nothing, Kyuubi said, however Naruto noted that her voice was distant. You can't lie to me. In fact you're the worst liar I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. Naruto put a hand on her shoulder and noticed it stiffen. Now why don't you tell me what's wrong? However, Kyuubi was unable to answer as her mind was focused on the hand Naruto had placed on her shoulder. There was an unusual warmth radiating from the hand that had spread from her shoulder and through the rest of Kyuubi's body. That, combined with her shock at someone actually touching her, having the gall to touch her, left her speechless. Kyuubi. Naruto continued to shake her, wondering what the hell was up with the woman. She had never acted like this before. Come on, tell me what's wrong. You know I can't really work on the stuff you want me to if you're not even around to critique me. It took a few seconds, but after a moment Kyuubi seemed to relax and turned around to look at the blonde. Look, nothing's wrong, I'm just not feeling up to doing anything today. Are you upset because of what happened yesterday? Asked Naruto, taking a shot in the dark. However, when he saw Kyuubi look away he knew he had hit the nail on the head. That's it, isn't it? The way that waitress treated me bothers you, doesn't it? Kyuubi scowled. Of course not. Why would I care about how some foolish humans treat you? The only thing that I care about is that you allowed such trash to treat you like that. Rather than get angry, Naruto just smirked. If that was what you were concerned about, you wouldn't act so distant. His smirk widened as Kyuubi looked away. I'm right, aren't I? It bothered you to see how she treated me. The blonde shook his head. You know, I'm surprised. You never seemed to care about me being hated before. Kyuubi frowned for a moment and for an instant her eyes showed a small flash of emotion that was too quick for Naruto to catch. A second later she scowled at the blonde and sat on the bed facing away from the blonde. I don't care about you, or how you're treated beyond how it reflects on me. Now leave. Fine. Naruto stood up and was about to leave before deciding to pass a parting comment. You know, I don't blame you for what happened anymore. Sure, I may still hold some resentment towards you, but you seem to be just as much a victim as me, and I guess everyone, even you, deserve a second chance. Consider this yours. Kyuubi's eyes widened and she turned around only to see Naruto had already left. Flashback end. After that little incident, Naruto had left Kyuubi alone, and eventually she came back as if nothing had happened. Even though they had tried to get back on track, both had noticed a small shift in their relationship, though neither could tell what it meant. After that Sunday had rolled around, which was the date Naruto had a date with Yugito. This is really nice, Yugito commented as she and Naruto sat by one of the lakes that could be found in Konoha's many parks. There's almost no vegetation in Kumo, so I don't often get to enjoy nature like this. It's really beautiful here. Naruto smiled. I suppose it is. I've lived here my whole life, so I guess I've taken it for granted. The blonde slurped up some of the noodle goodness that Yugito had brought for him. Ramen. Wanting to do something she had never gotten to do in Kumo, Yugito had decided that she wanted to go on a picnic. When Naruto had met up with her, she had already gotten all of the food prepared, some of which included Naruto's favorite noodle dish. I don't know how you managed to guess my favorite food, and I don't care, Naruto moaned in appreciation. If you're trying to get on my good side, I'd say you succeeded the moment I smelled this delectable dish. Yugito choked on her food a bit as she began laughing. Actually, it was no guess. It was rather easy to find out what you liked and buy it. After all, gathering accurate information is necessary for a shinobi, right? She said in her best Naruto voice. Hardy har har, Naruto grunted in sarcasm, before slurping up more ramen. You're just lucky I have this ramen, so I can't stay mad at you. Ah, are you saying you would be mad at me? Yugito gave him the puppy dog eyes, kitten eyes, which on her exotic feline eyes looked incredible sexy. I was only teasing. Naruto blushed a bit but still favored her with a grin. Well, I guess I wouldn't be too mad if I didn't have ramen. Yugito matched his grin with her own before taking a bite out of her tekadon. We both know that you wouldn't be able to stay mad at all. I've only known for a little while, but I know you're too sweet to stay mad at me. Don't look too into it. I just can't stand the thought of making such a pretty girl cry. Naruto huffed as he looked away, grinning when Yugito began to giggle. Hey Yugi-chan, I was wondering something. Yugito hummed around a mouthful of food. While I only saw a little bit of your ability, you strike me as someone who is way too skilled to be just a genin. Yugito smirked. What makes you say that? Well, for one, your walk. It's the same kind of walk I've seen in many of the Jonin senseis and a few other veteran ninja I know. You act more confident than the average genin as well, and unlike the average genin you don't hold any of their arrogance. There was also the speed you used in that battle with Kiba. The only person I know who is that fast besides myself is Lee, and I get the feeling you were holding back. That technique you used as well also looked like a very high-level jutsu and complicated. Naruto listed off, so I was just wondering, how are you still a genin? Yugito debated on not telling him before shrugging. It didn't really matter in the end whether he knew or not, and the Raikage had not specifically told her not to tell anyone. Truthfully, I'm not. I was just never technically given Jonin status, or even Chunin status. Most of my younger life was spent training, and after that the Sandaime Raikage wanted me to gain more experience and had sent me out on solo missions. There was a small pause and Naruto frowned as he saw a fleeting moment where pain had been evident in her eyes. I guess she wasn't always respected in Kumo, Naruto thought to himself. Not sure what to do, he gave Yugito's hand a small squeeze, causing her to smile before turning back to what they were talking about. I'm sure you know how important these exams are, and not just for the genin but for their village. Naruto nodded. I understand a bit of the politics and economics involved. He looked at her as he thought about what she was saying. So you're here to basically showcase Kumo's power, and in turn, get more jobs for your village. Being held in Konoha is just a bonus since we were once enemies. This shows that your village's ninja can survive even under hostile conditions. Something like that. Yugito smiled. You know, you don't like to act it often, but you're pretty smart. Meh, I studied hard. I actually don't pick this stuff up easily. I had to really work my ass off to learn anything, especially this kind of political crap. Naruto grimaced as he remembered all of the studying he had to do. It took a while, but I'm pleased to say that for the dead last of his graduating class, I've done pretty damn well. You were a dead last? Yugito asked, not believing it. Naruto nodded. Unlike in Kumo where you actually received ninja training, my training was stunted by bigots who didn't want the demon to become too powerful. He shrugged. That was another part of the reason I did so many pranks, you know. I figured if I'm not gonna get the chance to learn anything in class because of the teachers constantly sending me out on trumped up charges, I might as well do something that would actually get me in trouble to make it worth my while. Yugito shook her head. Sometimes human stupidity tended to amaze her. Then that just shows how strong you really are, as well as how much potential you have. How long have you been a genin? 6 months, Naruto answered. 6 months, Yugito whispered. Now that was shocking to her. She had him pegged at maybe a little under her in strength without her using the Nibi, and she was pretty damn good, on par with ninja of the level around Hitaki Kakashi if not better. For him to grow this strong in 6 months was unbelievable. She smiled at him. I guess you really do have potential. Naruto beamed in pride, feeling pleased that someone else acknowledged him. Even if she was from another village, of course. After all, I am going to be Hokage one day. For the next hour or so of their time at the lake, the two blondes talked about anything and everything they could think of. Yugito even surprised Naruto by unsealing a shamisen and playing for him. He had to admit she was very good. After her performance he had asked her if she would be willing to teach him. After all, he figured it would be nice to have a hobby. When she agreed, Naruto had once again been surprised, shocked and embarrassed when she had decided to teach him with a more hands-on approach. Yugito had made him sit with his back against her chest while she used his hands to show him the keys. Of course he could not even think about what keys were what or what notes they made. The only thing that had been on his mind were the feel of her amazingly firm and rather sizable bust pressing into his back, and the feel of her deceptively soft hands over his. By the end of their picnic, Naruto knew nothing about playing a shamisen. However, he did know that it would be next to impossible for him to deny that he was not a pervert, or at least very close to one. After their picnic, Naruto had offered to walk his fellow blonde to her apartment, which she accepted with a grateful smile. I had a lot of fun today. Naruto-kun, Yugito said as she turned around to face him. Perhaps if we have some more free time before the finals we can do this again. Why yeah, Naruto replied, the blush that had been on his face since his music lessons had still not faded. I would love to spend some more time with you. Yugito smiled as she leaned over and gave him a kiss on the cheek, right on top of his whisker marks, making it feel like he was on fire. When Yugito moved away, Naruto saw the smirk on her face and knew she was aware of what that did to him. How she knew that particular bit of information he did not know, but he secretly vowed to get her back somehow on their next date. As he left the apartment he was unaware of Kyuubi watching what his date like a movie. Some of those moves she put over him were pretty good. She did not want to admit it, but that cat woman was pretty decent at seduction techniques, even if she was being gentler with Naruto so as not to push him away. Maybe I could do something like that to get him to listen to me more. She thought about that for a second before deciding it wouldn't work. If I did that he would realize what I was doing, and I still don't know how this seal works, so I have no clue if he can restrict my powers or not. Best not risk it. What she did not admit, even to herself, was that the thought of doing something that may make Naruto lose what little trust he had in her left her feeling sick to her stomach. The next day, 299, 300 pant. Naruto dropped onto the ground as he finished his physical training. With his demonic ability to regenerate any damage done he had taken to increasing his weights every time he trained, pushing his body far harder than he had before. Naruto grunted as he lifted himself into a sitting position and dropped the weight. He leaned back on his hands as he took a quick breather. Time to get back to work, Naruto, Kyuubi commented, smirking as she watched the blonde work up a sweat. Naruto grunted in acknowledgement as he stood up on somewhat wobbly legs. Am I going to be working on the Yuki whip? No, you've actually got a fairly good grasp on it. It's not perfect, but you can continue working on it later. It's time to work on the next technique I want you to have. It's called Kitsune by Fox Fire. It's a powerful flame I created that, at its strongest, it can match those of Amaterasu. And before you ask, yes, it is the one I made around your hands when you fought Gaara. To start, I want you to build a fire since it's easier manipulate than it is to create. Naruto did as asked, making a small fire pit and creating a fire with a basic Kaden Jutsu. Okay, so what now? Now I want you to send Yuki to your chest and mouth as you inhale. And then when you exhale, send all of your Yuki towards your mouth and into the flame. Naruto did as instructed, channeling his Yuki into his chest and mouth. When he felt he had a decent amount he exhaled, sending the Yuki into the flame. Naruto watched with an odd fascination as the flames went from red and orange to ghostly blue and dark blue. Yata! Naruto shouted as he jumped into the air, I got it. No you didn't, Kyuubi decided to burst his bubble. You managed to increase the flame's strength, however that's all you did. First you need to maintain the flame, and then you need to increase its power. Remember I said at its hottest my flames could compete with the black flames of Amaterasu. When you manage to master the Kitsune by the color of your flames will be white, the antithesis of the black flames. Now, try again and this time, maintain the fire. Naruto blinked before his shoulders slumped. Fine. You don't sound very enthusiastic, Naruto. Should I take that as a sign you don't want to learn? Naruto's eyes widened, and no. I do. The techniques he was learning were far too good for him to pass up, no matter who he learned them from. Kyuubi snickered a bit. Kami, it was so fun to rile the blonde up sometimes. Alright then, get to work. For the next week this was his focus. He would do his morning workout, then he would work on the Kitsune Bai, afterwards he would work on the Yuki whip some more, then cool down with his afternoon workout. His training had eventually started to become so intense that Naruto was forced to keep a cage bunshin on hand so it could drag him back to the apartment, since on most cases, Naruto was simply too tired to move, or had already lost consciousness. 6 days later, Sunday. It had been a full 2 weeks since the 1-month training period had started and Naruto had finally decided to follow Sarutobi's advice and head over to the hot springs. He was thankful when the person working the front desk was a female who looked to be around his age, meaning she did not know about his tenant and would not refuse him entrance. He entered the hot spring area clad only in a towel. He gave a loud sigh of relief as he entered the hot water and leaned against a rock. Having never been to a hot spring before, it was definitely a novel experience. I'm going to have to come here again, he thought as he stretched himself out, feeling his muscles loosen under the hot waters. Closing his eyes, Naruto drifted off for a bit, letting the soothing warmth send him to sleep. Only to be awakened several minutes later by the sound of giggling. He opened his eyes and glanced in the direction the sound was coming from, where he saw a white-haired man dressed in kabuki clothing with a large scroll strapped to his lower back, hiding in a small bush as he peeked through a crack into the women's side of the hot springs and scribbled furiously into a notepad. Now, having spent as much time as he had with Anko, Naruto did not particularly care about perverts. His belief was that if a female can be as perverted as Anko was, then it was perfectly acceptable for a male. After all, fair is fair. However, because of his hyperactive senses, the blonde shinobi found that all he could hear was that blasted perverted giggle and the man's pen furiously scribbling on his notepad. And it was beginning to fray on the last of Naruto's nerves. "Hey Kyuubi, wanna see a prank?" asked Naruto as an idea to deal with the pervert popped into his head. A prank? Kyuubi perked up. While she was not really much of a prankster herself, a part of her had enjoyed watching Naruto do them. It had been one of the few things she had found amusing when the blonde was younger. "Sure, what do you have in mind?" Naruto snickered. "You'll see." Naruto went through a few hand signs before disappearing in a puff of smoke, before turning into Naruto. Standing up, Naruto walked over to where the old white-haired man was scribbling away, using all the stealth skills she had picked up from outrunning the Anbu in her youth. She grinned as she felt Jiraiya stiffen in surprise when she slid her arms around his neck, and then shock when he felt the feminine assets smash up against his back. "How would you like to see a woman up close, instead of peeking from a distance?" Naruto said in a seductive voice. "Hey. The white-haired man grinned, blood dribbling down his nose. "Oh yeah. Come to Papa. I knew one of you ladies would be unable to keep your hands off me." The old white-haired man spun around. However, as soon as the man was facing her, Naruto smashed a fist under his chin. The old pervert let out a yell as he was launched into the air and fell back down, on the other side of the hot springs. "Eek. Pervert. Smash. Take that, you. Pervert. Crack. Bash. How dare you. Bam. Pow. Wham. Ladies. Please. I'm sorry. Aye." Returning to his original form, Naruto sat back down in the hot springs and smiled as the kabuki man flew back over the fence, hitting the ground hard where he began to occasionally twitch. "Not bad, Naruto," Kyuubi said as she assessed the tactic. "I think it was overall good, but you could have done the whole kitsune seductress act better, maybe have made him fly into the female's side through a nosebleed." "I give it an 8/10. "What? Come on, Kyuubi," Naruto whined. "I've only done this a few times. Besides, you saw what he was doing. I doubt seeing a naked chick would faze him, even one as hot as me." "Then that just means it needs more work," Kyuubi said with some finality. Naruto sighed. "I just can't get a break." "What was that, Naruto?" "In nothing." Naruto looked over to see the white-haired man groaning as he sat up. "What hit me? I believe it's called righteous female fists of fury," Naruto commented with a snicker. "Though from the looks of your wounds and that you're still conscious, it looks like you're used to getting this sort of punishment. And since it seems you're so used to this, I'd have to assume that you're some kind of masochist and this is how you get your jollies." The white-haired man glared at Naruto. "Hey, show some respect, Gaki." "Do you know who I am?" Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Do I care?" The man huffed, however he quickly grinned. "Get ready, Gaki." From the east to the west, Naruto watched the man start hopping from foot to foot in a weird dance while he made some weird introduction. Sighing, the whiskered blonde did what he felt was the best thing to do at the time. He ignored him. When the man was finished, Naruto looked back at him with a bored expression. "I'm sorry, did you say something?" Kakashi suddenly looked away from Sasuke's training and pumped his fist into the air. "I knew I would get one of them one day." Sasuke just looked at his sensei like he was a complete idiot. The white-haired man immediately face-faulted. "Were you even listening to me?" Naruto picked at his ear. "Not really, no. You damn Gaki. You need to learn to respect your elders. Especially one as great as me." The man puffed up his chest. "Respect is earned, not given." Naruto tilted his head to the side. "Besides, you don't seem to be much more than a pervert." The man seemed to gain new life as he grinned at Naruto. "Ah. That's where you're wrong. I am not just a pervert. I am a super pervert. Did you girls hear that? It's that pervert again. Let's get him. Yeah. Oh, the man paled as he realized shouting that out in the hot springs may not have been the best. He looked back towards the blonde, only to find him gone. That was when he heard the fence to the other side of the hot springs get smashed open, and he turned to see the women, fully dressed in their clothes and holding bats. And they were all wearing Anbu clothing. The white-haired man whimpered, "Mercy." Naruto walked down the streets of Konoha, making his way towards Ichiraku's after his trip to the hot springs was ruined by the arrival of the annoying white-haired pervert. As he made his way to his favorite ramen stand, he was stopped when a voice yelled out to him. "Oi, Gaki." Naruto turned around to see the white-haired man coming up to him. "What do you want?" "You ruined my research." The man scowled at him. "You mean peeking?" Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. "What's your point?" "I expect you to apologize." Naruto blinked owlishly at the man before he started laughing. "Ha ha ha, you can't. Ha ha, you can't be serious. You expect me to apologize to you?" The man's right eye twitched. "That's exactly what I expect you, damn Gaki. It's the least you could do for ruining my research." Laughing some more, the blonde shook his head. "There is no way I'll be doing that anytime soon. It's your fault for peeking into the women's side of the hot springs. I didn't tell you to do that. The only way I would even consider apologizing was if you made me." The white-haired man smirked. "Well, that's fine, Gaki. We can do it this way if you want." Naruto shook his head. "You think you can beat me? I'd like to see you try. You what the hell?" he shouted as he felt something latch around his waist. Naruto only had time to see something pink before he was being hauled into the air with the white-haired man jumping after him. It was some time later that whatever had grabbed Naruto deposited him in the middle of the forest, with the white-haired man. Naruto stood up and growled at the man. "You stupid pervert. What the hell do you?" He stopped and blinked when he noticed the large toad standing right next to him. He looked over at the man before turning his attention back to the toad, and then to the man again. Finally, it clicked. "You're Jiraiya of the Sannin, aren't you?" Naruto shouted in surprise. "Ho ho, so you have heard of me, Gaki." Jiraiya smirked. "Yes, it is I, the great, the gallant Gama Sannin of Mount Myobokuzen." "Jiraiya-sama." Naruto's sweat dropped. "I swear to Kami, you Sannin are a bunch of freaks. First I run into that stupid pedophile Orochimaru in the Forest of Death, and now I find out that you're a super pervert. What's next? The last Sannin is chronic gambler with an alcohol problem." Somewhere in High no Kuni a blonde woman sneezed while playing a game of cards, and losing badly. "So you ran into my old teammate Jiraiya knew this already, of course, but appearance had to be kept. "That's pretty impressive that you survived. I guess." Naruto frowned. "Not like he couldn't have killed me at any time. He wanted our team to survive so he could give Sasuke and I some kind of gross hickey. Stupid pedo bit me." He brought a hand up to where his cursed seal had been. "I got lucky. Since I am special, the cursed seal didn't get a chance to take effect." "Kid, I already know about the Kyuubi," Jiraiya stated, thinking that was why the cursed seal had not taken effect. "But that's not important. What is important is that you now know who I am, and so realizing and basking in the might of my greatness, you must apologize for your atrocities against me and acknowledge me as Jiraiya-sama." "Right." Naruto's sweat dropped before an idea came to him. "How about you help train me, so that I can kick ass during the finals and maybe I'll acknowledge you? How's that sound, Ero Sennin?" "What did you just call me?" Jiraiya yelled out. "I am a Sannin and demand respect. I won't train some Gaki who doesn't understand that." The Gamma Sannin smirked. "Besides, what makes you think I'd want to train a little prepubescent brat like you?" Naruto narrowed his eyes at the man before a grin etched on his face. "Well, I just thought you would like to be able to say you trained a Hokage." Jiraiya crossed his arms. "Been there, done that." "What do you— oh yeah, I forgot you trained the Yondaime," Naruto mumbled. "Well, wouldn't you want to be able to brag that you trained 2 Hokages?" He noticed Jiraiya still didn't look convinced and sighed. "Well, if that won't convince you, how about this? Orochi no Jutsu." There was a puff of smoke, and when it cleared it revealed Naruto, completely naked except the wisps of smoke covering her unmentionables. She winked at the now nose-bleeding Jiraiya. "Will you train me now, Jiraiya-sama?" Jiraiya nodded as he began to drool. "Yeah, I'll train you in anything you like, you pretty little thing." Naruto gave him a pout as she stuck a finger slightly in her mouth. "You promise?" Jiraiya nodded dumbly as he grinned. "Of course. And you know that the great Jiraiya-sama's promise is worth its weight in gold." There was a puff of smoke and Naruto was back to normal, grinning like a loon. "Good. I'll see you tomorrow, Ero Sennin." Naruto disappeared in a swirl of leaves, leaving Jiraiya to blink for a few minutes before smirking. "Kid's definitely interesting, at least." Thank you for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and have a great day.